And the Sharks will take a knee as the Predators win it here tonight, 8-2, and tie the team record for consecutive games with a point. 15 games, 13, 0-2 in that span.
How about them Predators? 15 games in a row with a point. They kicked the crap out of that terrible San Jose team last night. 8-2 was your final. Ian, I was nervous yesterday because I took my buddy Greg Prince to the game, and he went with me to the 9-2 game against Dallas that started this whole thing.
That's right. Yeah, you mentioned that.
So I was nervous. And then when Mikhail Granlund comes off the rush and fires one into the back of the net, I was like, oh, God, oh, God, oh, God. And I know Barry Trotz was nervous based off his comments yesterday on the program, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter.
No, it did not.
It did not matter. 8-2. When I dropped Greg off after the game last night, he said to me, he goes, I'm -1 now in goal differential for the 9-2 game and the 8-2 game. And it was just, this has been unbelievable. Stillman and Company, by the way, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Let's get right to those Predators. I mean, this team is on fire. And I don't know how you can't enjoy what we're watching right now. Because not only are they on fire, but they are good. And not only are they good, but they are getting better. Every game they get better. The cohesion is better. The power play is better. The passing is better. The young players are better. The goalie is playing better. Every game they're getting better. And they're winning the games that they should win. These trap games, we talked about it. Trap game on the road at San Jose, won that one. Trap game the next night at Anaheim, won that one. Oh, no, long road trips over, team's feeling good. They come home, play Ottawa, beat the crap out of them. Last night was a trap game. Barry Trotz came on the show yesterday and said, long road trip, a lot of success, quick turnaround, Tuesday night, terrible team. Thursday, you're playing the best team maybe in the league. It is the definition of a trap game, and Barry didn't want to say it, but he said it yesterday when he said this is going to be the hardest game. You know, and he's just saying, hey, these points count as much as the other points, i.e., do not lose to this team. He was worried just because of the trap, and it doesn't matter. Because this team does what good teams do, which is when you play an inferior opponent, you kick the living daylights out of them, and they did in the second and third periods yesterday. And they're not only winning those games, they're not only winning the games they should, but they're matching up with the big boys, and they're beating them and beating them handedly like they did Colorado, like they did Winnipeg. I mean, it's not like those teams, that team didn't play well, or, that team's slumping, or that team played their backup goalie, or that team. You realize that Winnipeg and Colorado have not lost since you beat the daylights out of them? Which means they're playing well, too. But them playing well versus you playing well still ends up with you winning 4-1, 5-1, whatever one you want to call it. And we will see tomorrow night when they match up with the big, bad, defending Eastern Conference champion Florida Panthers, and we will see how they measure up. But last night, the Predators put on a clinic as to what you're supposed to do when it comes to playing an inferior opponent this time of the year. I love this team. I love everything about this team. I love the general manager. I love the coach. I love the top players. I like the Scarbinis. I even like the guys they're calling up from Milwaukee, though Delgado did drive me crazy on that first goal that they gave up to Granlund. Like, hey, well, welcome to the NHL. Let's pay attention. But there is nothing not to like about the Nashville Predators right now. This team is on fire. There is not a team that they could play in a playoff series who I would say they can't beat them. Now, I wouldn't pick them to beat Edmonton, but I'm not going to tell you they can't beat Edmonton the way they're playing right now. And the only problem that this team faces, in my opinion, is that the playoffs don't start today. Because if the playoffs did start today, the way this team is playing, they might win the cup. This team is incredible. It is incredible to watch the transition from where they were and really to think about where this team was a year ago. To think about the fact that we as fans were begging the organization, please tear this team down. Please go in a different direction. And we knew. And I think I speak for a lot of us out there when I say we knew when we begged them to tear the team down, when we begged them to go in a different direction, we knew that that meant lean seasons ahead. That meant that, like, hey, guys, like, you know, the fun that we had in the playoffs of 15 and 16 and 17 and 18, and it really stopped becoming fun after that. 19 was not fun. Even though they had 100 points and they won the division and they had a first-round series with Dallas, that wasn't fun anymore. But the fun that we had and that we wanted to get back to and everything else, we knew it was probably going to be a couple of years. Nope, not this team. This team is awesome. This team gets better every game. It's unbelievable to watch. And I wrote in my notes today, I'm like, hey, stop complaining. But I don't even know who I'm telling not to complain. I guess Scott and Brentwood that wanted to trade a first-round pick for Kyle Granlund, though Granlund did score. I think he needs to stop complaining a little bit. But other than that, I mean, what is there not to like about this team? This team plays hard every night. This team gets better every night. This team, and the thing that I think is amazing about the turnaround that this team has had is it didn't start with the best players on the team. It didn't start with Forsberg and Yosi and Soros and basically those guys saying, all right, we're going to put the team on our back and carry them out of this. They're doing that right now. I mean, they're playing at the top of their games right now, which is why you're beating the stuffing out of everybody. But that wasn't what started this. What started this was the turnaround from the bottom of the roster. That first game in St. Louis, Colton Sissons had a goal. Luke Evangelista had a goal. Luke Shin had a goal. On that road trip, Kiefer Sherwood had a night where he had 2 goals. Michael McCarron had a big goal against Anaheim. And that's the thing about this team, is that every game they play, it feels like Yosi scores every night now. But outside of that, it's like, who's going to get theirs tonight? And last night, everybody got theirs last night. I mean, it was so impressive to watch. And so I look at this team where they sit right now, and I know that sometimes I feel like organizations use the anything can happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs as a crutch. That it is, like if you're Minnesota right now, or you're St. Louis, though I think they're pretty much out of it. But again, any of these, fringe playoff teams, anything can happen if you make it into the playoffs. Sometimes I think that's a crutch. Sometimes I think teams use that, and I think the Predators used that for a while to try to fool themselves into, well, if we can just make it, then maybe the puck will bounce our way and will. And for years, that wasn't the case. This team is every bit a contender. This team is right there with everybody else. Because this isn't the NCAA tournament, where while a 1 seed did lose last year, it is not likely that Houston or Connecticut or any of these 1 seeds will lose this week in the tournament. But what is very likely is we're going to see upsets. We're going to see teams in the Sweet 16 that we didn't think about. We're probably going to see a team in the Final Four that shocks us like FAU did last year. That's totally possible. And that's what the Stanley Cup playoffs are pretty much every year. And you're one of those teams now. You're a contender. You do everything you're supposed to do. And Barry Trotz on the show yesterday, I don't know if he said it, Ian, but I felt it from him, which was this uneasiness and nervousness that there's still about 3 weeks to go until the playoffs.
Yeah, it was something to the effect about teams who are playing for, meaningful games down the stretch are in a better position than teams that kind of coast.
And I think Barry is sitting there thinking to himself, oh, God, this is great, and I have nothing to complain about. But I know that what goes up must come down at some point, and there's no way this team can keep playing like that. And I would agree with that theory, except I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop with this for the last 3 weeks. I knew they were going on a heater when they went out to St. Louis. I told everybody on that trip. I said, this team's about to go on a heater. Something like 4-0-1 on the road trip. They went 5-0-0. But what I didn't expect was that heater would last another month. And I'm just getting to the point with this team where I'm like, you know what? I'm not putting anything past them. This team is that good. This is a good team. This, right now, is a Stanley Cup contending team. And the more I watch them play, the less I doubt anything about them. Whether it's the coaching, whether it's the development, whether it's guys coming up from Milwaukee, whether it's the star players, whatever. This team is on fire. That Tyson Berry sat his tush in that press box for about 3 months, and now he's out there on the ice, and he's contributing. This is a good team. This team right now checks every box of a good team that is a contender. I remember 2 years ago when the Predators limped into the playoffs in 2022, and that team was falling apart at the seams this time of the year. They played every single playoff team down the stretch and lost. Every single one of them. They'd play Pittsburgh, who was a playoff team. They'd play all these playoff teams, and they'd get beat. And yet they still found a way to make it into the playoffs, and they tried anything can happen in the playoffs, and I knew it wasn't going to. And they got swept in 4 games. This team goes up against a bad team. This team, the 2022 team, played San Jose. Almost exact same scenario late into the year, and exact same bad San Jose, and they had to win in a shootout. This team wins 8-2. This team is everything that the 2022 team wasn't. And my biggest contention with the 2022 team was that team never had a shot at all to win anything, and anybody who thought they did was fooling themselves. And the 2024 team right now, this team, if you don't think this team can beat everybody that they play, and that doesn't mean they will, but they can. If you don't think this team can beat every single one of those teams in this entire league, you haven't been watching. This looks like a special team. Now, the biggest of big boys comes tomorrow night. And before we even started the show, I said to Ian, I am pumped about tomorrow night's game, especially because it's an early start time at 6:30, which means that game should be over right into the Vols game. So it should be a great night of sports. But this team can play with anybody. This is a good hockey team, folks. Get excited if you're not already there. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And last night, I was at the game, and there was one player in particular that I saw, that I just watched him play, and I said, oh, my God, this is Andrew Brunette and Barry Trotz in motion. This is where this entire organization is headed. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company. What a win last night for the Predators. What a run, tying a franchise record for the Predators. And again, tomorrow night there at Florida. And let me just say this. We have gotten to the point where this team's getting so hot in town, don't ask me for tickets. If you've got my phone number, do not text me and ask me for tickets, because now people are going to be saying, hey, what can I do to get tickets, Jared? I need to get some tickets. And I'm going to be like, look, I'm going to the games. Don't ask me for tickets. But guess what? We are going to give away a pair of tickets later today. So be listening for your chance to win a pair of tickets to see the Preds on Tuesday night take on another big boy in the defending Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights. So don't ask me for tickets, but we will be giving them away later. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
It comes up for Forsberg. Quickly over for Yosi, skating to center. Yosi across the line. Off to the right wing side. A backhander to score! Are you ready for dessert? Finally, Luke Evangelista pots one from the chances he has had here tonight. Predators take a 4-2 lead.
Pretty sweet backhander there. What did you see on that play?
Yeah, I mean, I try that move a lot, actually, coming off the right wall there, and I was holding it like I was going to shoot, and I saw the D-man stick kind of flip and took it to the middle and just tried to rip it on net and went in, fortunately. So, yeah, turned out pretty well.
Luke Evangelista last night, and it's crazy. I hadn't heard Pete's call of Evangelista's goal, but I was at the game with my friend last night, and I was watching how Evangelista played, and I was like, he deserves a goal for the way he's played tonight. And then finally, when he had that, right there, that little move, and then the backhand right at the top of the net, oh my God, it was beautiful. Ian, did you hear what they said on the San Jose broadcast?
I did, actually.
They said Gretzky would be proud of the move that Evangelista put on. I don't even know who it was he put it on. The move he put on that Scarbini from San Jose.
Seems a bit extreme, but hey.
I mean, let me say this. One texter texted in, our phone line driven by WilsonCountyUnder.com, and says, Jared, are we developing young players enough to maintain success for future years? ? Wasn't that paramount for this year? Let me tell you something. Last night, I'm sitting there at the game, and I'm going to highlight Luke Evangelista. He's not the only one. But I'm watching Luke Evangelista, and I'm watching what he's doing in the offensive end. He is skating circles around people, literally. He is maintaining possession. He is setting guys up for beautiful passes. He had one wraparound behind the net where he set it in front for Jankowski. And, I mean, if Jankowski was there, it would have been a phenomenal, it would have been a Roman Yosi-like play, the way he set that up. And, it hit me. He had a game like this at Minnesota about a week ago on Sunday where he was just the shifts were incredible. And I'm watching him do it again, and it hit me last night at the game. I'm like, he's developed. Like, he has taken the next step. Barry, we talked to him about all these young guys they brought into the season. Evangelista, Parsonen, Tomasino, and it's like, we really want to see these young guys, who's going to make it, who's not. And Barry said, we're waiting on one or two of these guys to pop. And Evangelista has popped. He is freaking good. He looks like a star in the making out there. He's awesome. So when you ask me, are they developing the young players? The answer is yes. And I think this is a tribute to the coach because we always get caught up in player acquisition, right? We spend too much time. And it's because drafts are popular and trades are juicy. And this is why the guys like Adam Schefter make $9 million a year just to cozy up to agents and teams so that they can be the ones to say, breaking news, the Cowboys have traded this player. Like, we're so obsessed with player acquisition that we totally lose sight of player development. Like, I don't think that the Ravens are so much better at drafting guys as much as I think the Ravens are better at coaching guys once they draft them and developing them into great players. And that's why, I promise you, Barry Trotz values player development, which is why, as he said, he's going to cook the players in the minors before calling them up to the pros. But I'm going to tell you this right now. This is an Andrew Brunette thing, and it's not just Evangelista. First, it was Jeremy Lauzon. He was the first guy who I didn't think was very good and had been in several different organizations in the NHL, had played for different coaches. Everybody says, look at his size, look at his potential, look at it. But he was nothing more than a third-pair defenseman. And all of a sudden this year, with this system and the way Andrew Brunette's coaching him, Jeremy Lauzon went from a guy that I didn't even want on the team to a guy who right now he's injured. Barry Trotz is coming on the show saying it's not that serious. If the playoffs were today, he could play, but we want to get him healed. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And that is quite a 180. And that's Andrew Brunette. And Luke Evangelista, what we're seeing from him, the development in his game, that's Andrew Brunette. And Mark Jankowski, who I love watching play on that line. That's Andrew Brunette. Tommy Novak. Woo, He had some plays last night. I mean, that's Andrew Brunette. We used to talk about this with Floyd all the time, which was how do you differentiate between what's the player and what's the coach? And he said, if I had one guy that wasn't living up to expectations, it was probably the guy's fault. If I had a group of guys that was not living up to expectations, then it was probably the coach. Well, I don't care if it's Kiefer Sherwood, Michael McCarron, Luke Evangelista, Jeremy Lazan, Alexander Carrier. I don't care. Fabro's even playing better before he got hurt. That's the coach. Like this, it's the coach. And so, again, I don't want to take anything away from Evangelista because Evangelista, I mean, he's looking like the real deal. And me and Ian, you know, I had sent in the grid, but me and Ian hadn't talked about the game last night other than when I did kind of bitch about Delgado with him during the game. But we hadn't talked about Evangelista at all. And so when we went to break, we're talking about Evangelista, and, I mean, we both are just like, oh, my God, he's getting so good right now. Oh, my God. And I tell you, like, this has been a problem that the Predators have had over the last handful of years, specifically at the forward position. But over the last handful of years, I mean, I'm trying to think, like, the last kind of young forward crop that the Predators had, really the last young crop of players the Predators had that got to the NHL and became, I mean, legitimate NHL players was kind of that grouping of Forsberg and Yarncroke and Sissons and Arvidsson. Like, that was kind of the last group. And since then, the Predators really haven't developed a lot of young players from the minors. In fact, it's been a lot of sending Tomasino down, sending Parsonen down, calling this guy up, sending him back down, calling up another guy. And there's been a lot of frustrations, too, with some of these young guys and their lack of development, like Tolvanen when he was here, or Fabro for all those years. And now everybody's starting to develop, whether it's the really talented and skilled players like Evangelista, which his ability does not grow on a tree. That's why he's a second-round pick, and that's why I think he's going to be better than a lot of these other guys. But you're getting it from McCarron and Cole Smith and Kiefer Sherwood and Mark Jankowski. I mean, it's the coach. Like, it's the coach. And so last night, I saw Evangelista out there. I joked to my buddy that I went to the game with last night, and I said, I go, he must have invited a girl to the game or something because the way he's playing, I mean, he was putting a show on out there last night. Now, granted, it's the Sharks, so we got to take that with a grain of salt. But, I mean, this isn't a one-night thing. I texted Robbie last night during the game, and I said, Evangelista, oh, my God. I mean, it's been unbelievable. And so when he's out there playing like Sidney Crosby and the other team's announcers are saying Gretzky would be proud, that tells you when you ask, is the development getting? Yes. And this coach is developing them. And again, I know we talk about, you know, what's the coach's fault, what's the player's fault. And I don't want to throw John Hines under the bus here because this isn't really about John Hines. But John Hines has been coaching, I think, now for 7 or 8 years in the NHL, and his teams never win anything. You know, Minnesota is competing. They've got a shot at making the playoffs. They're probably not going to make the playoffs, but they have a shot to make the playoffs, and that's exactly what John Hines is. Every year John Hines has been the coach. John Hines gets the team either right there on the cut line, and they're either in or they're out. And that's what it's always going to be. Andrew Brunette takes over the Florida Panthers when Joel Quenneville takes the walk of shame out of town, and they win the President's Trophy. Andrew Brunette doesn't get a head coaching job, ends up as an assistant in New Jersey. They shocked everybody last year, made the playoffs, won a round. Now he's here, and he's completely turned this team around. That's not an accident. That's who this guy is. And I complained about the coach for a long, long time, and this has nothing to do with him. But this has everything to do with the guy that they replaced him with. Because I now know what special coaching is, and I know what mediocre coaching is. And for an organization that has employed Barry Trotz, Peter Laviolette, and Andrew Brunette as 3 of the 4 coaches, I mean, my God, this is a special coach. 615-737-1025. We're to your phones next. 615-737-1025. And I got to tell you something. Yosi last night. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Face off in the San Jose zone and a blast. Roman Yosi blasted from the right point. Predators are on the board. 1-0. That one was almost as much mustard as his second goal, the other night in Seattle.
You talked this morning about how sometimes you need the veteran core to kind of carry a team, especially at this point in the season. How much did Roman specifically do that, especially early on in this game?
Well, I mean, he's been doing it all year, but I think he took over a game a little bit. We talked about in the Seattle game, and again, a little bit this morning, how he often gets overlooked. But he made some really special plays. He's having a great year. People, like I said, overlook him because he's done it for so long and he's had so much success. But I'm grateful to have him on our team. He drives it both on and off the ice.
There you go, Roman Yosi last night. I just want to say about that goal where he shot it. And if you're somebody who, maybe goes to 1 or 2 games a year, I understand that sometimes following the puck is a little difficult. Especially, Fox, when they first got the rights years and years and years ago, when they got the rights, they had the little, Ian, do you remember the little trail on the puck?
Oh, yeah.
That Fox, I still give Crispy crap about that all the time.
Glow a little bit and then had a little trail, yeah.
Oh, so because Crispy was on like the pre and post game shows for Fox back in the day on their big national broadcasts, and I still bust Crispy's chops about that. But if you watch it more often, it's pretty easy to see the puck, and so I watch it pretty much every game, so I can see the puck. So last night, Yosi fired that one-timer, and I mean, it had so much gas on it that I saw him take the shot, and then I saw the puck after it hit the back of the net coming out of the net. And I was like, how fast was that blast? And so I immediately, every time somebody scores, I don't know about you guys, but I look right up to the Jumbotron, and I'm like, the Jumbotron, the replay could not slow it down enough for me to see how the puck got through. I'm sure TV probably did a better job than the Jumbotron did last night, but that is how much juice was on that shot from Yosi last night. He is playing incredibly, and it is an honor to watch him play. Barry Trotz said yesterday on the show he thinks he's the best defenseman on the planet right now. I don't watch enough of Vancouver to tell you, how good Quinn Hughes is or isn't. I'm just going to tell you this. Roman Yosi's won the Norris Trophy since I've been on the radio here, and he came in second, a very close second. Another year, this might be the best I've ever seen him play. And, again, I think this goes back to the coach. And Yosi, when this team was struggling, I thought was playing under his standard, and it drove me crazy. And now Yosi is playing at the top of his game, and it is not a coincidence that this team is winning because of that. That is right there in it. Kevin says, oh, so the Predators are awesome now, and no one sucks like you always say, according to the clown Jared Stillman. Get real, dude. That comes from Kevin in Florida. So what do you want me to do? Tell you that the team's bad? I mean, what you want me to come on and say, hey, I was on this team for years because I did not believe in the way things were going with the coach and the general manager. And I begged them for years to change the coach and the general manager. And finally, they changed the coach and the general manager, and the team is much, much better, and they're winning all these games, and I'm not allowed to sit here and be excited about my hockey team being good? See, that I don't understand a lot of you people. And this is why I always say, these opinions and feelings, they're not contrived. They are what they are. That's why people say, I'll have an opinion, and, oh, you're setting the Titans up, Jared. You're doing this because when this happens, then you'll be able to say that. I'm like, you guys are putting way too much stock. And I appreciate the credit that you give me into my opinion making, but this is not chess over here. This is, I watched the game last night. I watched the Predators curb stomp San Jose. I see that they're doing it to every bad team they play. They're going toe-to-toe with the big boys. They're beating them. They're getting contributions across all 4 lines. They're calling guys up from Milwaukee who are playing great games. They're getting steals from Saros and Lankinen. What am I supposed to not be happy about? What are you not happy about? It's like the day of the trade deadline. Those were one of those shows, and we had a lot of these last week, where I couldn't really prepare for the show because everything was changing all throughout the day. So I couldn't prepare at 9 o'clock in the morning for a show at 2 o'clock because I didn't know what was going to have happened by 2 o'clock. And so as the Predators made the trade for Jason Zucker, I was kind of putting together, on one sheet of paper, okay, here's what the lines look like now. Here's who's available at Milwaukee. Here are the prospects in the pipe, kind of the long-term guys. Here's defense. Again, Milwaukee, long-term prospects, goalies, Askarov. And then here's all the draft picks. And I wrote out for the next 3 years all the draft picks they had. And when I was doing that exercise, I was like, okay, 1 first, 2 seconds, 3 thirds, 1 fourth, and 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 3 fourths. I'm like, they got a ton of draft picks. They've got prospects in the high minors. They've got guys, that are really in low juniors that are developing at their own pace the way Barry Trotz wants them to, and they got a ton of cap space, and they're beating everybody right now. What is there to not like? Somebody tell me what I should be mad about. So when I see you oh, Jared, you're a joke. You've been on this team. Yeah, and now they're good. This is what I had envisioned. Now, I didn't envision this happening this fast. But this is when I tell you that Eric Dickerson line of, we want to win. We don't want to almost win. I'm like, I want a team that can win. And this team can win. Austin says, does this team remind you of the 2017 team? The answer to that is no. They do not remind me of the 2017 team because the 2017 team, while they did play well in the second half of the year, they never caught fire at any point. And even late into the season, they were losing games against some of the big boys. They played Chicago here late in March, and they got beat. And it was a Saturday night game where it was a back and forth, it was a back and forth battle. And the Predators turned the puck over in their own zone late. Chicago scored. And I was like, I don't think they can beat Chicago. And then they lost that last game of the year at Winnipeg, and it played them from the 7th spot to the 8th spot. So now they had to play Chicago. So I do not have 2017 vibes for this. One texter, Craig, says, and we've got a lot of these in here, that say, I've had season tickets for 8 years and have been going to the game since the Predators have come to town. And with the style Andrew Brunette plays, it is the most exciting brand of hockey Nashville has ever had. I would say this. It is so much more fun to watch this. And again, I am not trying to throw the old coach under the bus because that's not the way he wants to play. But it is so much more fun to watch them just fire pucks across the ice and just go, 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 go. Whereas before it was like, okay, regroup, dump the puck in, chip it down, go get in on the forecheck, this is way more fun. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in on this. And again, we are giving away a pair of tickets to the Predators Tuesday night game against Vegas later in today's show. So be listening for your chance to win those. Chris Sanders will join us next. How does he feel about the work that has been done for the Titans? And how does he feel about the work that needs to be done for the Titans? We'll do that coming up next. Hey, tomorrow it's your chance to participate in another edition of Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rex Road tomorrow morning at 8:45. Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get it seen, heard, and sold. And by the way, congratulations to our winner yesterday. She guessed Roman Yosi. I'd say that's a pretty good guess right now in Pick to Click. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight as Vanderbilt's women's basketball team takes on Columbia in the women's NCAA tournament. Pregame at 7:45, tip-off at 8 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. One texter, by the way, when I said, what are you talking about? Everything's good. Why? I'm excited about the Predators. Says, well, you aren't excited about the general manager of the Titans being good, and he is killing it, Jared. So there is some precedent for those texters' expectations of you, to which I said to the texter, they don't have a right tackle. And so I don't think everything they've done is bad, but, I mean, they still got some holes. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program, former Titans wide receiver. So, Chris, how do you feel about the team right now, given that free agency, for all intents and purposes, is over, and the team still has some holes ahead of the draft?
I feel pretty good, but the thing about it is you addressed some things that were a real sore to the team. We did address the wide receiver situation with Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is an explosive player, and I think that, a position that we really don't talk about that's really valuable for your for your quarterback, that you need to have is Cushenberry, the center. I mean, you got a guy that's 6'4", 315, as opposed to having a smaller guy in Brewer that's 6 feet, 274. So even though the Tennessee Titans are not there yet, they still put some pieces together for make this Tennessee Titans team pretty good.
Chris, two positions I'm worried about that I don't think the Titans are going to fill in free agency or the draft. One is right tackle, where I think they're going to try Nicholas Petit-Frere out. Yeah. And two is tight end, where I think they're going to give Chig another shot as a number one tight end. Yeah. I am not convinced either guy is an NFL starter. What do you make of them, and what's your expectation?
I think Chig is. I just think that, especially with Brian Callahan being in there, who's going to put guys in position to make plays, I think that he's going to actually use, Chig's ability, because if you look at Chig, once he gets the ball in his hands, if he catches it, which he should this year, I think he can make some explosive plays. So I think that with that situation, that's going to be okay. And who's the other guy that you say?
Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. Ian.
PT.
Yeah, PT. So, with the situation with him, I mean, he's just got to develop into the player that he's capable of being. I mean, he went to the Ohio State where they had some good linemen come out, but at the end of the day, he's got to develop and make sure that he comes into play. Now he has Bill Callahan that is a mastermind of helping offensive line guys. So with him, having him there, I think the PT is going to be a great player, not a great player, but a good player for the system.
I got to tell you, I'm worried about Petit-Frere. I'm worried that he doesn't have the dog inside of him.
Yeah,
He was the number one offensive line recruit in the country
when
he went to Ohio State, and he never really made it. And as we know at Ohio State with Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones, and they build the dogs up there at Ohio State, and that worries me a little bit.
I think that, I may not say he doesn't have the dog in him. I just think that, if you don't understand the concept of what's going on at the offensive line at the NFL level, you tend to play a little hesitancy. So now you got Bill Callahan coming in, who's a guru of understanding how to have their offensive line guys play well, and he understands how to get the best out of your players. So I think that with the coach that they have in there in place right now, I think PT's going to benefit from this because he's going to understand, he's going to have confidence in his ability, but also have confidence in the scheme and actually know what he's doing. I just think it's a confidence issue.
Chris, I saw two mock drafts come out yesterday, Mel Kiper Jr. and Daniel Jeremiah, the lead analyst for NFL Network, and they both have Joe Alt available at 7.
Sure.
And we've been doing this for so long, Chris.
Yeah.
It can't be that easy, right? That this perfect left tackle prospect is going to be available for a team that is so desperate for a great left tackle for the next 10 years. There's no way it's going to be this easy, is it?
I mean, it's not going to be that easy, but what's the glaring thing we've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 years is the left tackle, and it's been an eyesore for the Tennessee Titans. But there's a lot of guys that I like at the offensive line position. I know everybody's talking about Joe. Everybody thinks it's a slam dunk for Joe Alt. You never know what's on the Tennessee Titans board. They may have somebody rated higher. They're just kind of being quiet about the situation.
I'm just afraid the Titans aren't going to get Joe Alt. I think there's no question that if Alt's there at 7, you take him.
Yeah, absolutely.
No questions after that. What I'm worried about, because, again, I think we can agree it's going to go quarterback, the first 3 teams. Marvin Harrison's going to go very early in this draft before the Titans pick. And then the Chargers don't have any receivers at 5. The Giants have signed Jermaine Illuminor, who played right tackle last year for the Raiders. They drafted Evan Neal at right tackle high in the draft a couple of years ago. They've got a left tackle in Andrew Thomas. The Giants aren't a threat. I mean, it really is. I'm starting to feel like this is just a match made in heaven, and we need to start talking about the second round and the fourth round and the fifth round and not even worry about the first round.
But you know what's crazy? Let me ask you this question, Jared. What if Joe Alt is there and Neighbors is there? What do you think the Tennessee Titans would do? Do you think they'll say, okay, well, I understand we got Calvin, I understand we got, Hoppin, I understand we got Burks. Can we add another situation, against some more receivers in there? Because if you look at, some of the guys that the Tennessee Titans got on the offensive line, I know we got Cushionberry, got him, and you got some other offensive linemen that they signed. Do you go with a receiver? Do you say, okay, Neighbors is there, or do you go with Franklin from Oregon, or do you go with Brian Thomas from LSU? So it's so many things that can actually go on, because at that 7th position, everybody, yes, is saying Joe Alt, but all of a sudden you got Neighbors that falls in there. What do you do if that player's sitting there? That's the question that's got to be asked.
I'll ask you, what will you do?
I think if oh man, that's tough.
See, I don't think it's tough.
I mean, I know you go to a tackle, but if you got Neighbors sitting there, I agree with you. I'm going to offensive tackle, because the thing about it is you definitely need a left tackle. So I would go with Joe Alt from Notre Dame. I'll go with Latham from Alabama.
So I mean, I don't even think it's a discussion. I think Joe Alt's the pick. I said this yesterday. Just J.J. McCarthy. I don't know how you feel about J.J. McCarthy. I'm not a huge fan as far as him being a franchise quarterback in the NFL. But they're all saying he's the 4th guy, and I don't think Minnesota added that second first-round pick on accident. Right. I mean, I think Minnesota is probably targeting J.J. McCarthy, and they're probably going to try to go get him. If Minnesota called me and they offered, and let's say Alt was on the board at 7, and they called me and they offered that pick to go get J.J. McCarthy, I think I'd turn him down and take Alt over the second first-round pick.
I think I would, too. I mean, I kind of agree with you, Jared. I mean, I know – we got a lot of good receivers that they just got. I mean, Calvin really, but the thing about it is, at the end of the day, you still got to have somebody to protect, Will Levis. I mean, if you look at last year, what was the Achilles heel of the Tennessee Titans? It was the offensive line. I mean, they gave up 60 sacks last year, and he was consistently getting hit. So, even though it looks good to have some good players on the board, but at the end of the day, you got to have an offensive line to protect. So I think you got Joe Alt, is 6'8", elite size, big physical man. So you got to have a guy like that to protect your quarterback.
Chris Sanders with us. Last one for you. Are you surprised that Ryan Tannehill has not gotten a job yet with all the quarterback movement in the NFL?
Yeah, I am surprised, because I still think he's a pretty good quarterback. It's just finding the right fit for him to be there. And at the end of the day, you better believe there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that go down, so he's going to get a job somewhere. But I just think that it's kind of surprising that it's this late. I thought he would get picked up earlier. But at the end of the day, I think before the season starts, he's going to be on the team. He's going to do great wherever he's at.
Chris Sanders, as always, he is the best, and he's got all my love. Chris, I love you.
Love you too, my friend. I miss you, brother. Love you.
Yep. Chris Sanders joining us, as always, on a Wednesday here on Stillman and Company. I mean, it's clear Chris likes J.C. Latham, and I don't have a problem with J.C. Latham, but, I mean, there's no – if Joe Alt's there, I'm taking him. There's not even a discussion. I will say this, and TD told me that the Titans will not do this, that if it is Marvin Harrison and Joe Alt that are there at 7, TD says the Titans are taking Marvin Harrison. I would take Joe Alt. I'm not a huge Marvin Harrison fan. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, there is a trend with young quarterbacks in the NFL. And the question has to be, whose fault is it, and how do you avoid it with yours? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So, with the big trade of Justin Fields over the weekend, which I think is a much bigger TV trade than I think it is a football trade, but with that, it kind of slams the book on the quarterback class of 2022 and the quarterback class of 2021. Because it slams the book on 22 with Kenny Pickett being shipped away from the Steelers and 2021 with Fields being shipped away from the Bears. It's almost like when a pitcher's done in baseball and the runners that he inherits either score or don't, and you could say, well, you can close the book on him. And I think you can close the book on 2021 and 2022 as far as the quarterbacks are concerned. And one thing that is pretty obvious to me is that all of those quarterbacks have failed except for one notable exception and one maybe exception. The maybe exception is Trevor Lawrence, because Trevor Lawrence hasn't failed, and he is a starting quarterback in the NFL, but even he's disappointed a little bit. The only exception, the notable exception, is Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant from the 2022 draft. Other than that, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, all gone. And by the way, Malik Willis, he's not gone, but let's not kid ourselves, he's terrible. So when I thought about that over the weekend, I feel very strongly about this when Fields got traded. I wondered, and I have wondered, is the problem the quarterbacks, or is it the teams that have selected these quarterbacks and have invested in these quarterbacks having failed those quarterbacks? And I think on the micro level, we can go over each one. But I think as far as the macro view, I think it's as much the teams failing the quarterbacks as it is the quarterbacks not being worthy of being able to start or perform at a high level in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence came into the league. Again, he was supposed to be a generational talent. Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Trevor Lawrence. But he got saddled with Urban Meyer as his head coach. And what a disaster that was. Justin Fields shouldn't have been on the field as a rookie. And not only that, after his first year, when he shouldn't have been on the field, they fired the offensive coach, brought in a defensive head coach who brought in a new offensive system that he had to learn from scratch. Guy shouldn't have been playing to begin with, ends up playing when he shouldn't be out there, has to learn a new system. Oh, and by the way, the high draft choice that could have helped him the next year, they didn't have because they used it to get him. That's not Justin Fields' fault. Kenny Pickett had Matt Canada as his offensive coordinator. They were chanting at Penguins games to fire Matt Canada. And Bill Belichick wouldn't pay for DeAndre Hopkins last year for Mac Jones and gave him a defensive coordinator as his offensive coordinator after his Pro Bowl rookie season. And also, let's not kid ourselves. If Malik Willis had been developable, the Titans did not do a good job of that when they stuck him on the field when it was obvious that he wasn't ready to play, and not only stuck him on the field, but stuck him on the field on Sunday Night Football. That goes a long way towards somebody's confidence. So when I think about all these teams and all these quarterbacks and all the failures, and again, thinking, is it really Mac Jones' fault? Or the fact that Bill Belichick couldn't build around Mac Jones, didn't get him any wide receivers, got terrible Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator? I wonder where you stand with your young quarterback. And the reality is, you're kind of in between. Right now, the book is still very much open on Will Levis and the Titans. But in some cases, they've already made some terrible mistakes. And in other cases, I think they've done some pretty good things for him. For starters, which I don't like, they put him out there last season behind an offensive line that couldn't block. I told you guys, when everybody was saying, well, you got to put Levis out there to see what you have, I said, hey, you do this, you're going to get him killed. And everybody, because they're impatient and they want to see the young guy play, they say, well, you can't wait until you have a perfect offensive line, Jared. But you could have waited until you had Joe Alt and Lloyd Cushenberry, and hopefully they'll do something on the right side of the line, but you guys didn't want to hear that. And I don't know how all those hits and those injuries that Will Levis suffered last year, how that will affect him mentally next season, and neither do you. Also, they've already changed the coach on him, which, while I do think the change in coach will be better for him because I think the coach they got him is better for the quarterback than the coach he had, I don't like changing the coach. And the owner has already crowned him the franchise quarterback, which I don't ever think is a good idea until somebody becomes Mahomes. That being said, the Titans have done some good things when it comes to Levis. Like they spent a lot of money this offseason on a center for him. And they spent a lot of money on a wide receiver for him. Specifically, a deep ball wide receiver that will allow Will Levis to throw the ball down the field, which is his biggest strength. They also brought in an offensive guru coach for him, which you know I like, whereas Caleb Williams is going to end up with a defensive coordinator who's on the hot seat as his head coach. Why would you do that to Caleb Williams? That being said, though, there's still a lot more to do. Like, who's the tight end for the Titans? Chig? Now, let me ask you this question. Is Chig Okonkwo really, when we think of reliable, dependable, consistent tight ends, is Chig Okonkwo really that guy? Because I remember Steve McNair's growth and development as a young quarterback, and he had Frank Wycheck, who very much was dependable and reliable. Who's right tackle? I know, Titans Twitter thinks that Bill Callahan can take Jared Stillman and make him into a starting right tackle. I don't think that's the truth, but that's what people want to believe, and maybe the Titans will convince themselves of that as well. The problem is right now it looks like the right tackle is going to be a battle between Nicholas Petit-Ferrer and Dylan Radins. Wait a minute, I've seen this before. Remember in 2022 when that was the right tackle? And remember how we cried real tears for David Quessenberry, a replacement level tackle, to come back? And let's not forget again that while everybody seems to just forget about the fact that quarterbacks get hurt left and right in this league, the Titans went out and got maybe the worst backup quarterback in Mason Rudolph to go behind Will Levis. So if Levis gets hurt, the chances of salvaging a season, the way that the Cleveland Browns did last year behind Joe Flacco, is completely gone. The same way you did with Neil O'Donnell in 1999. We also don't know who's going to be the starting inside linebacker on defense and wear the green dot, and that's a problem too, because if you don't have a defense, Levis is going to have to go out and score 40 points a game, and I don't think that's fair either. So when it comes to nature versus nurture, and it comes to all these quarterbacks that have failed, Zach Wilson's a bum. Mac Jones is a crybaby. Justin Fields was awful. Kenny Pickett, he was so bad. Let's not forget about Matt Patricia and Matt Canada and the fact that Justin Fields was on the field before he was ready, and then they changed the coach and they brought in a bozo defensive coordinator to be their head coach, and all the problems that these guys have run into. Because if you don't think about these problems, it will happen to your young quarterback. And that's what I'm worried about. Again, I'm worried about tight end. You guys want to convince yourself Chig can play? That's your business. But there's a big difference between, well, I think Chig can catch the ball this year, and the Houston Texans last year going out and getting Dalton Schultz for C.J. Stroud. Remember, all of these quarterbacks, they fail for one reason or another. But sometimes it's not them that fails, it's the team that fails them. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to some of your phones on that. Plus, I did pull the archives on something that Floyd said a couple of years ago that I think is very relevant now that we know who Will Levis is most likely going to be throwing the ball to. We'll do that next, and your phones. Twice daily. That's right. I love Twice Daily. Twice Daily loves you too, and they love me. And that's why I'm so glad that I love to tell you about Twice Daily, then I'm a member of their rewards program. Twice Daily has your cravings, and you can save on every visit. So stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. Try their new wraps, Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, Nashville hot chicken, and they're made to order with your favorite toppings. And when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Also, you get notifications. I got a notification today about free something or another that they always have all kinds of giveaways, which I love, with Twice Daily. And at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time, and they've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and the new pretzels. So what are you doing? Download the Twice Daily app, join their rewards program, and fill up your cravings. Twice Daily, what are you craving? What's the plan in terms of making sure that instead of training for a draft or anything like that, that you are really focused on getting better for the start of next season?
Yeah, I'm definitely like that. You know, I'm a workaholic. You know, I'm gonna work myself into the ground. But right now, you know, I'm not, and I'm you know, enjoying myself for the first time in a really long time, which has been incredible. And you know, letting my body get back, and you know, here in a week's time or so, we'll hit the ground running again with training. But it's been a blessing to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor a little bit, you know, these past few weeks. But, you know, as we figure out what the roster looks like, who there's going to be, I'm going to do whatever I can to get with as many guys as I need to, wherever they may be. I'll be, for the most part, in Nashville, so, you know, getting to learn from the new staff and all that. But, yeah, I mean, do whatever I can as a leader to, you know, get everyone else ready.
There you go. That was Will Levis, and that was at the Super Bowl. So when he's like, you know, I'm going to take a little time off, get my body right, and then get focused, well, that time's over. I mean, now it's time to focus on the next season, the team, your career. And so I came across something when the coaching change was going down, where I went back when the Titans were going through the coach change, and I listened to the old Jared and the GM shows from the last coaching search, the Mike Mularkey out, Mike Vrabel in shows. And there were a lot of different topics that we touched on about what to look for in a coach, and it was really a lot of fun for me to be able to listen to these old shows. And I'm not going to lie, I listened to them, and I was like, will this Jared ever shut up and let the old man talk? But obviously to kind of rehash the memories with Floyd. And so one thing that he said, we talked about the coaches and what the coaches need to do for Marcus. You know, what's in the best interest of Marcus? And Floyd said at the same time, not only was coaching a part of Marcus, but there was a second part. And that was the responsibility that Marcus would have of making sure he and his receivers were on the right page. Here's what the old man said in 2018 about what Marcus then needed to do that I think Levis needs to do now.
How do we get Marcus good? Just judging from what I saw last year, I mean, he's going to have to work on his fundamentals. He'll have this entire offseason, and he needs to work on fundamentals. He's going to have to get on the same page with the receivers, and he needs to get all those receivers and fly them to Hawaii or fly them to Eugene, Oregon, or fly them to Franklin, wherever they can all get together, and they are going to have to live together for about 4 months, throwing every pattern in the book. This is exactly the way you run it. This is the way you run it against this coverage. This is the way you run it, and be on the same page in all of that. And if they don't do those kind of things, then you're going to run into the same issues we did this year, you know, which is the receivers running and out, I'm throwing it in. Well, guess what? That's an interception.
Remember Traylon Burks against the Texans? Not the one that he dropped, but the one where Levis rolled out and he threw a ball into double coverage for Hopkins and Burks was streaking wide open down the field. That's where you iron that out. And now you know who's going to be on your team. Yeah, they might add a receiver in the draft, but we know it's going to be Hopkins and Ridley and Burks and Nick Westbrook-Akine and Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard and Chigakonkwo and Josh Wiley. That's what it's going to be. Ian, did I leave anybody out?
I don't think so.
Chestnut, maybe.
Yeah, he did sign back.
Go ahead. Chestnut, fly his ass out there, too. I had Robert Turbin, the former NFL running back, on my show on SiriusXM this week, and he used to play for the Seahawks. And we were talking about Russell Wilson. And he was talking about not believing the narratives that surrounded Russell Wilson as a teammate in Denver. Because his experience with Russell Wilson in Seattle was Russ flew those dudes out to California, out to Hawaii, out to wherever, flew them out, took care of them, put them up, everything. He even told a story about how here I was, the backup running back of the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm sitting courtside at the Laker game because Russell Wilson is the one who hooked it up for everybody. And I don't know if Russ still does that now with his receivers in Pittsburgh or did it with the guys in Denver, but that's what Levis needs to do. And I don't know what Levis's plans are. You know, in that cut where I asked Levis, you know, what's the plan with these wide receivers? And he said, I'm going to be in Nashville and learning from the staff, and, I'm going to try to get the guys. What I need to know is, does that mean that, hey, guys, I'm going to be in town this week, so let's all get together at Lipscomb at 2 o'clock. Does that work? We'll get together on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Does that work? We can do that for 2 weeks. Or is it going to be, all right, boys, 8 a.m., I'll see you there. Because the great players are the 8 a.m., I'll see you there. One of the regrets I have in my life was when I played high school sports. And I didn't play in college, so high school's all I had. And, we weren't great, but we could have been better. And one thing I didn't like when I look back on it is that I really, really, really valued the team and winning and competing and everything else. But in high school, it wasn't necessarily cool to be obsessed with playing sports. Everybody had their own thing to do. You push somebody, hey, let's play pickup this time. Oh, I can't. I got this going on. It wasn't like I felt it inside of me to say, hey, no. We're going to focus on playing basketball around here. But in hindsight, that's what I wish I did. When it comes to Will Levis, I don't know if he understands this, but as the leader of the team, it doesn't matter if you're a second-year player or if you've been in the league for 10 years. You're the quarterback. Okay, so for as much money as Calvin Ridley makes and for as much money as DeAndre Hopkins makes, it doesn't matter if you don't get them the ball. And you decide who gets the ball. So when it comes to whether or not he's the guy, there's a lot of things the Titans have got to figure out for him, starting with both his tackle positions, also his tight end, also his defense, everything else. But he's got to decide for himself how he's going to take the bull by the horns and get these guys better. And when the old GM says, hey, Mariota needs to take those guys out to Hawaii, and he needs to fly them out, and he needs to put them up, and he needs to spend every day with them for the next 4 months, he's not kidding. He's not exaggerating. He's telling you what the great quarterbacks do, and that's what Will Levis has to do. And trust me, Tony Pollard might have his own plans. But you got to shut that down. You got to let Tony Pollard know. If you want to be on my team, if you want to get the ball on my team, you will be here at 8 a.m. when we get to going. And so that's something I'm going to be watching when it comes to Levis. And there's the way I can word this that I think would make a lot of people happy, or at least a lot of people would understand it. There's a way I can word this that would piss a lot of people off. The way I'm going to word it is the way to make everybody happy, which is if that's what ends up happening, if we start hearing that, yeah, the offseason program starts April 14th or whatever day the offseason program starts. The offseason program starts April 14th, but we've actually been working every day on our own for 5 hours a day. That's a sign that he's the guy. That is a sign to all of us that he might be special. Now, if I said it the other way, if he doesn't do it, it's a sign that he's not the guy, that would piss a lot of people off. You can't tell that he's not the guy. It's his own free time, Jared. It's not Again, if he does it, it's a sign that he's the guy. And this is binary. In the NFL, either you're the guy or you're not. And I think there's still hope around here that he can be the guy. So this is the first step for him. I'll bang on the team on his behalf every day about the right tackle position. I will, and you know I will. But he's got to do his part too. He's got to do his part. And his part is going to be getting those guys together, organizing it, and making sure everybody knows that they work for him and what he needs them to do. And we'll see. We'll see if he ends up doing it. 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in on this. 615-737-1025. We'll do that coming up next. FanDuel Sportsbook, That's right. I love FanDuel Sportsbook. It's my official sportsbook app. It needs to be your official sportsbook app as well in the month of March. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And you know me. I love FanDuel Sportsbook. This is the time of year that, I always look at those 12-5 matchups because usually those are pretty all over the place. And so that's $200 back to use on point spreads, money lines, and, of course, picking who can win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is not withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about that position. I mean, those are two young players. I've always felt like it takes tight ends usually between 3 and 4 years to really come into their own. It's a hard position to play because they got to do all the stuff in the run game. They have to be in the pass game. They got to know protections. That position probably has to know more of the offensive scheme than any position on the roster because of just the versatility that they have. And so to see what Chig's done in his career, to see the flashes and potential of an athlete like Josh, Those are two young, talented players that we have to get the most out of. And I think we can find great ways to use them because just like any talented player, you find a way to put them in great position to go win matchups. And that's our job as coaches. But I think those guys are both capable of doing that at the tight end spot and can do some of the other things required of the position in the blocking and protection game. When you have a dynamic pass catcher at tight end, you find every which way you can to use them. There's not a lot of them out there, but there is some, the Travis Kelce's of the world. But those guys are so dynamic that they force you to find ways to be creative and get them in spots that they can make an impact. And but I'm of all the positions with young players on our team, the tight end group with those two guys in particular is really exciting. And I think having J.O. there, Justin Outen, coach that group kind of back to what he's been used to doing over his career, I think will really help those guys grow.
There you go. That's your coach, Brian Callahan. And Ian, I know these coaches don't say a lot, and I know that they'll lie sometimes, and I wouldn't, I like Brian Callahan fine. I mean, I've met him once. I thought he was fine. I'm not going to say that he's a truth teller or a liar. I have no idea. But it sounds like it'd be hard to walk that back of what he said there about the tight ends.
In what way?
Like, they're not getting to the tight end. Chig's starting at tight end next year.
Well, I mean, maybe, but he said there was a lot to work with, and they're young and talented, and they've shown some things. I didn't see anything there that said, hey, we got a rock-solid starter for the next 5 years.
No, but it said we have a rock-solid starter for next year, is what I heard when he's like, of all the positions on our roster, this is the one that I'm excited about the young players at.
Maybe.
Chig is your tight end, folks, and I don't like it. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I don't mind the idea. Chig would, if I was running the team, Chig would be on it. And I would certainly be challenging Chig this offseason. And I would say, hey, last year we gave you the number one tight end job. We thought you were ready. We gave it to you, and you didn't produce. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another tight end. Now, I don't know if there are any tight ends on the board or anything else left, or I've pretty much come to the resolution that the Titans are rolling with Chig, even though I am nervous about this. I'd approach it differently. I've just come to that, so I'm not going to get too worked up about it. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Gentry asked us, I remember at training camp, and Chig was, I think, performing pretty well at training camp. And Gentry said to me, he's like, I'm not buying this. Everybody's all in on Chig. I was like, oh, I am. I'm like, I think Chig is ready. I think Chig's a big play guy. I think Chig showed last year that he's got the potential. I think Chig's a big body. And I think Chig is kind of this hybrid receiver, tight end. Yeah, yes. And the answer is no. At least it wasn't in 2023. Now, we'll see in 2024 because it doesn't look like they plan on replacing him. But that's a them thing. And every time I see a player like this, I'm reminded of an old Titan by the name of Lamont Thompson. When I was a kid, Lamont Thompson was a player the Titans, I believe, claimed off of waivers. But he was a special teams backup safety that carved out a role for himself as a nickelback and kind of that third safety position. Kind of what they really want Molden to be, but he's not good enough. And then all of a sudden, the Titans, back when the cap was real because they didn't have void years, the Titans ran into the cap problems, and they had to get rid of Lance Schulters, who was a very productive and good safety. And so what they did was they just moved Lamont Thompson into that starting role. And Lamont Thompson wasn't very good when he was a starter. He was a very good situational backup-ish role player. He wasn't a good starter. And when I see a guy like Chig, who when he's the backup to Austin Hooper, comes in and provides some wow plays as a rookie and even had some big plays last year, I wonder, is he like Lamont Thompson where he's a good role player, probably not much of a starter? I say that because as I go to your phones, and your phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, Jared from Spring Hill, and I don't know if he actually thinks this or if this is just because he loves Brock Bowers, because he always texting about Brock Bowers, just says Chig sucks. I mean, that's one of the positions where if Chig fails, like, I'm going to be really hard on the Titans. And I know nobody gets in trouble for anything before it happens, so I'm not, finger wagging right now saying, oh, you need to, because Chig's going to stand. I'm not doing that. But I am going to tell you that this is a position I'm very nervous about because I don't trust what they have there, and they seem to trust it more than I do. One texter says, I went back and I watched some Mason Rudolph tape with a friend who is a big Steelers fan, and he's not that bad. He could win a few games for this team, and that's all they need. The real question around the QB position is why haven't the Titans gotten rid of Malik Willis yet? Also, Chig's stats last year and the horrible offense were nearly identical to George Kittle's first year. Well, George Kittle's first year, he was a rookie fifth-rounder, so my guess is they probably had another tight end ahead of him. And last year, Chig was the unabashed starting tight end. So let's keep that in mind. The second thing is on the Mason Rudolph front. I think Mason Rudolph stinks, and there is nothing you can tell me that is going to dissuade me from that opinion. And I'm going to tell you why. Because every opportunity the Steelers have had to dump on Mason Rudolph, they've taken it. They drafted him in the third round, and when Ben got hurt in 2019, they made him the starter. And then they benched him. They won games, and they benched him for a sixth-round rookie named Duck Hodges, who's been retired for like 3 years. But Tomlin couldn't, just get this guy off the field. So they did. Then, when Ben's run was over, they didn't just draft a quarterback ahead of Mason Rudolph. They signed a backup quarterback to go ahead of Mason Rudolph. And this was before the Brock Purdy third quarterback rule came back into effect. They didn't want him. So it was only once Kenny Pickett got hurt and once Mitch Trubisky had proven that he truly sucks that Tomlin finally turned it back over to Pickett. They won a couple of ball games at the end of the year last year, and then Tomlin couldn't wait to get rid of him again. I'm sorry. I know that TV thinks that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are good quarterbacks. The NFL does not. The NFL does not think that either guy is good because Russell Wilson is making the league minimum and Justin Fields was acquired for essentially the league minimum. And Tomlin rather have those guys than bring back Mason Rudolph for the tiny little change that you spent on him. The reason Rudolph is here is because he's cheap, right? It's not like the Titans said, no, Rudolph's our guy over Joe Flacco. That's not what happened. Joe Flacco's making $8.5 million. Rudolph is making $3 million. That's the difference. And as with everything in life, you get what you pay for. Texter says if the Titans draft Joe Alt, then the Titans are going to have 2 first-round picks on the left side of the line, a proven center, and with Bill Callahan coaching the offensive line, I wouldn't be too concerned about the line, and I would only focus on defense in the draft. Do I need to tell the right tackle story? Every time you guys say, you're good on the left side of the line, so who gives a rat's ass about the right side of the line? I ask the question, do I need to tell the right tackle story? I'll tell the right tackle story again. If you want me to tell the right tackle story, I'll tell it. That's why every time, this is the problem I have with this time of the year, which is everybody's a winner. I've always talked about the difference between a concert and a game, right? I don't know what the average ticket price to the Preds game is, and I don't know what the average ticket price to Dan and Shay tomorrow night at Bridgestone Arena is, but I'm going to guess it's comparable. The difference? There is no chance that Dan and Shay lose tomorrow when they get up there and sing. That's what happens in the offseason. What happens is a humongous deficiency, which is right tackle, can completely go fudged because in your mind, you convince yourself that, they're good on the left side of the line and center, so we don't need to worry about right tackle. Or, no, Bill Callahan, he's the guru, so we don't need to worry about right tackle. And that's great. Only that's not going to help you in September and October when you're trying to block all-pro pass rushers for your second-year quarterback. And so what I don't want us to do is I don't want us to get to the mindset of accepting guys that aren't good as good players because it makes us feel better in March, only to make us angry come the fall. And that's how I feel about right tackle. So when you tell me, I wouldn't worry about offensive line anymore, I'm like, you don't have a right tackle. And as it has been proven the last 2 years around here, right tackle is a really important position. So don't tell me I wouldn't, oh no, Joe Alt, you're fine. You don't need to go. The offensive line's fine. Please. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025 here on our program, Stillman and Company. And Ian, I got to get something off my chest.
Okay, please do.
And then I promise we'll get back to your phones. I got to get it off my chest. And I will say this. I think you guys feel the same way that I do about this. We'll do that next. Hey, sign up and play the 1025 The Game Bracket Challenge for your chance to win great prizes, including 4-day passes to Bonnaroo. The teams have been selected, so go to thegamenational.com/bracket challenge and fill out your bracket to compete. The 1025 The Game Bracket Challenge is brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Twin Peaks, and Volunteer Hose and Gasket.
and it's over. Colorado State dominates Virginia.
And our mindset tonight is we were just wanted to grind out possessions, just grind it out on both ends of the floor because that's the kind of game that it was. And so I think that's something that we practice, and we had that mindset, and I thought our guys executed it beautifully.
There you go. That was Colorado State's coach. I don't know his name. I don't need to learn it unless they make the Sweet 16. But they beat the crap out of Virginia last night. And I did catch like the very, very end of that game on the radio when I was leaving the Predators game last night. And I was like, oh, yeah, the first four. And I clicked it. And Jim Boeheim was calling. I think it was Jim Boeheim. And he was calling the game on the broadcast. And he was like half asleep calling the broadcast. Jim Boeheim sounded like he couldn't have wanted to be anywhere else. I got a confession to make. I just, the first four sucks. Like, I remember when I was a kid, they had 65 teams in the tournament, not 68. And so they had one play-in game on Tuesday in which Crap Bum State would take on Scarbini Tech. And I never watched, and I never cared. I remember, like, the first NCAA tournament I got into, that game, that play-in game, that 64th game was between Alcorn State and Siena. And I didn't watch. So I absolutely hate the first four. And there's three reasons why I hate the first four. The first is because I don't care to see all these games with 16 seeds playing each other. I'm sorry, but I didn't watch the MEAC championship, and I'm not going to watch the MEAC champion take on the WEAC champion. I don't care. And neither do you. I don't even know who played in the first game last night. Ian, off the top of your head, do you know who played in that first game last night?
Wagner and somebody.
I think it was Howard.
I think you're right.
Okay. Don't care. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they always play the good game, you know, the game of teams that actually belong in the NCAA tournament. They play those games at like 9:30 at night. I'm not staying up to watch Virginia play pack-line defense against Colorado State. I'm not watching. They're 11 seeds. I'm not watching for that. And it kind of sucks some of the joy out of the tournament because this first four, you know, we're telling everybody, go play our game bracket challenge, and everybody's fill out your brackets and get your brackets done. And I've got them going to the Final Four. But how can you do that if we don't know who's going to be in the tournament? Because unlike the Scarbini games where they play each other and it's like, great, now you're going to get slaughtered by Kansas, these other, you know, these teams in the 11 seeds might actually win. I think it's so stupid. And not only that, but like, are we really ready for real NCAA tournament basketball on Tuesday and Wednesday? The NCAA tournament is meant to be played on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then, of course, Saturday and Monday for the Final Four in the national championship game. I hate everything about the first four. I hate the fact that you can't fill out your bracket until the first four is over. I hate the fact that they play the first four, the real game that matters, at 9 o'clock at night, which is like 10 o'clock East Coast time. So I don't even know how these people stay up to watch it. And I hate the fact that it's just like, oh, no, we're going to make you sit through the end of these two terrible teams playing each other so that they have the right to get blasted by Duke. And then I hate how the NCAA makes us pretend like this is real basketball, like that this round counts. You know, they used to say this. Remember how we call it the first and second rounds? They used to, for about a 3 or 4 year period, they used to call it the second and third rounds because they considered this the first round, and that was so unpopular because these first four games are so stupid that finally they gave up and it's back to first and second round. But I freaking hate the first four. And I hate this just demand that we pretend like this is real NCAA tournament basketball. And it's not. I don't even know who's playing tonight. Who's the real game tonight, Ian? What's the fake game and who's the real game?
I'd have to double check. I saw it, but I already forgot.
It didn't make your update?
No, it did not.
Yeah, like, I mean, this is not important.
Okay, let's see. The first game at 5:40 which is too early. It's 2-16s, Grambling and Montana State. And then 10 seeds after that, 8:10 p.m., Colorado versus Boise State.
Like, if those games were just on regular Tuesday night basketball on TV, would you watch them? And you
No.
know the answer is no.
Of course not.
I mean, so the whole thing is so contrived.
Man, Virginia only scored 42 points last night.
I mean, Jim Boeheim sounded like he was falling asleep.
That's just ridiculous. I heard that they had gone like a crazy scoring drought. That they used like the actual time and not the time in the game
I
because it
couldn't
had
tell
been so
you because
long.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I think these games are so pointless. I think they're so pointless. If you really wanted to see, here's the thing about Grambling and Wagner and Howard and North Carolina A&T.
Montana State.
And Montana State and whatever bum program you want to talk about. I mean, the thing about that is that they're only worth watching when they're playing the real teams in the NCAA tournament. FAU is not worth watching on its own. FAU is worth watching when they're playing Tennessee in the Sweet 16. That's when they're worth watching. That's the whole point. And so that's what makes March Madness March Madness. What doesn't make March Madness are these cash grab games where it's like, well, you know, instead of telling Boise State that they didn't have a high enough net or they didn't win enough meaningful games or whatever metric would have kept them out of the tournament 10 years ago, what we're going to do is we're going to play this fake game so that we can sell it to TNT and CBS, and they'll put it on TV, and people, you know, will tell everybody that they have to watch it. And we'll delay the brackets because, again, teams do actually make it to the Final Four out of this thing. So everybody just, instead of Monday filling out your brackets, wait for the Scarbini games, and then you can get to it. One texter says, the thing about the play-in game that annoys the daylights out of me is that people will say they made the tournament. You're playing your way into the tournament. They stop calling them the play-in games to try to make them sound more legitimate. I remember the great Kevin Stallings war that we had in 20, whatever year it was. I want to say 2016. When Vanderbilt had a really good team, and then they underachieved because Stallings wasn't a very good coach, and then they got their rear end spanked by Wichita State in the first four. And there were people that were like, well, Vandy made the tournament. They got beat by 20 in the play-in. Doesn't really care. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. Josh from White House says, I don't know what's worse, hearing about people's brackets or hearing how much you don't care about the first four. I got to tell you, I bet you, and look, I know when things are good and bad on the radio or whatever, I bet you this conversation about the first four is more interesting to almost everybody driving right now than the actual games on TV tonight will be. And that's why I hate the freaking thing so much. 615-737-1025. I've got a Preds take that I did not in a million years think I would utter, especially 1 year in. Not even 1 year in. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, and we'll be giving away those Predators tickets. We'll be giving those away later in today's show as well. Tune into 102.5, 106.3 The Game for NCAA tournament coverage brought to you by Toyota. Ready, set, go get your Toyota today at Toyota.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. The Predators are on fire. This feels like the old days. This feels like 2016. This feels like 2018. This feels like 2015. This feels like parts of 2017. I've missed it. Oh, I've missed it. And I didn't expect this to happen this fast. And today, I was sitting there thinking about how much I love my hockey team. After last night's performance, where I sat there and I watched my hockey team just kick the stuffing out of that terrible San Jose Sharks team 8-2. Knowing that my team has not lost in regulation in over a month. Knowing that they are far ahead of schedule, given where this thing was supposed to be. And I think we all know where a lot of this starts, and that's with Barry Trotz. There is no doubt that what you're looking at right now, the vibes you get from the team, have Barry Trotz's fingerprints all over it. Now, this is not to discount David Poile, because most of this roster was assembled by David Poile, but Barry Trotz had to go out and make some changes that he felt was necessary, like getting rid of Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, instead of our annual sitting around waiting for them to turn it around and play like they're capable of playing. But what hit me today was just thinking about how it's all come together under Barry Trotz and how fast it's all come together under Barry Trotz. Last year, before they made the announcement that Barry Trotz was going to be succeeding David Poile, that there was going to be a literal passing of the baton, and that David Poile would be bringing in his chief understudy for all those years as head coach in Barry Trotz, there was a lot of chatter about Barry Trotz. He went on the Preds official podcast, and he told everybody that he had moved back to Nashville. Somebody texted into the text line, and they said, Jared, I heard that Barry Trotz moved back to Nashville. Do you think that's a coincidence? And I said, I think it's probably a coincidence, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he went on the Predators podcast and he told all of you. Barry Trotz had other opportunities to go be a head coach after he got fired by the Islanders, but he decided to move back here. He did an interview on NHL Network in which he had a Titans helmet and a guitar signed probably by somebody famous hanging in the background of a brand new house. And me and Caroline laughed when we saw it on TV because we're like, look at Barry Trotz trying to get back in here. And when all the chatter was going on about could Barry Trotz come back into the organization, I resisted. Now, I didn't know Barry Trotz the way I know Barry Trotz now, but I resisted because Barry Trotz didn't have any management experience. Never been a general manager before. Had never been an assistant general manager before. He's a coach. And I thought when everybody was talking about, well, what about Barry? What about Barry? And it was really Chase who was like, oh, they could bring Barry Trotz back in. I'm like, Chase, we have to be willing to accept that there are probably going to be some people outside of the organization that we've never heard of before that are qualified to do this job to turn this thing around, and it's not going to be the people that we know of who give us the warm fuzzies, right? That would be like firing John Hines and go get Laviolette. You know I love Peter Laviolette, but that ship has sailed. But I was wrong about that because the Predators did bring Barry Trotz in, and Barry Trotz is doing things the Barry Trotz way. And Barry Trotz has this organization at a point where they are year one of a rebuild, a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. He changed the coach and went out and got somebody who plays an exciting brand of hockey that will sell tickets and keep interest, but more importantly, develop young players. They're efficient on the power play. They're getting the best out of guys they weren't getting before. That's coaching. They got a good coach. That was Barry Trotz. They have a ton of prospects that they can pick from at Milwaukee, and they've got guys in the pipeline that are still in college and juniors who may one day develop into stars like Matthew Wood and Tanner Mullendike. That's Barry. They have a ton of cap space for the upcoming seasons to use in free agency. Why? because Barry Trotz isn't signing anybody to 8-year deals if he doesn't want to. Instead, hey, let's give Michael McCarron a little security and a little bit of money. Let's give Mark Jankowski a little bit of security and a little bit of money. And if it doesn't work, then it's fine because we'll get out of it. Same with Tommy Novak. Everything he's done has worked. Even the turning the plane around and driving home from Las Vegas. It's worked. The message was clear. Here's the standard if you want to be rewarded as a Nashville Predator. And here's our expectations. And they've met it every day since then. And it hit me today thinking about how good of a job Barry Trotz has done in less than a year. I asked Barry this yesterday because he was up at the GM meetings, and I said, have all the other GMs come up to you and said, hey, what's the secret? You inherit a mess of a team with aging veteran players and bad contracts, and you're holding on for dear life. And I'll give David credit because David did realize this midway through last year, and they were able to get out from the Granlund contract. But Barry took the step of getting rid of Matt Duchene and took the step of getting rid of Ryan Johansson, and they got out from those bad contracts. And I asked Barry, do these other GMs say what's the secret? Because it's not supposed to be like this in year one. And so I'm going to ask a question that I don't know the answer to. But even asking the question in and of itself, I think is the ultimate compliment to the job Barry Trotz has done so far, which is it possible that Barry Trotz might be a better general manager than he was a coach? Barry Trotz was a great coach. The Nashville Predators, for years, punched above their weight when Barry Trotz was the coach. Why? And I think this was when David certainly had his fastball, and they were, making the best out of a bad situation with bad ownership and, instability and things like that. But the Predators competed. They didn't win a lot. They didn't have a lot of money. And they were playing against teams that did. But once the playing field started to even, once ownership started to really, Tom Sigerin really grabbed that bull by the horns, Barry Trotz started to win around here as a coach. I remember 2011 and 2012. And that 2012 team was a very, very good team that ran into an unstoppable Mike Smith in net with Arizona. But other than that, Barry Trotz was a great coach here. And then Barry Trotz went to Washington, and he won President's trophies and then ultimately a Stanley Cup. And I don't think Barry got the respect he deserved in Washington because they let him go after they mutually agreed to part ways. But they didn't show Barry the respect after he won the Cup, so he went to New York. They wanted to make Reardon the coach. They made him the coach. 2 years later in the bubble, Barry got his ass fired by beating him. And so Barry Trotz is a great coach who has, I think, exceeded expectations everywhere he's been except for maybe Washington because, again, the expectations with Ovechkin and those guys was go win the Cup, and Barry Trotz won the Cup. So he's a great coach. But he might actually be a better general manager. And again, here I was telling Chase a year and a half ago, do you really have to get the warm and fuzzies for Barry Trotz back? Can they not go outside the organization and find somebody who's got personnel experience? And ultimately, I think there was kind of an angle to this, and I haven't talked to the Predators about this, so these are my words, not theirs, but an angle of this which was by making the move to Barry, you're tipping your cap to David and saying, we're not going to destroy the David Poile way. This isn't like we're firing this guy and we're starting over. This is, we think David Poile's built something we want to build on, and we want Barry Trotz to build it. And so I accepted those terms because it felt like a plea bargain to me. I'm not getting my outside guy with personnel experience that's going to really be able to evaluate the prospects and do the dirty work the way I think, somebody should come up the ranks, but I'll accept it because it's a change from what's going on around here. And boy, am I glad the Predators made the decision they made because Barry Trotz is crushing it. and he's crushing it in every aspect. Is the team good? Yes. Do they have prospects? Yes. Do they have draft picks for the future? Yes. Do they have a ton of cap space? Yes. Do they have a great coach? Yes. Barry Trotz on our show after the trade deadline talking about kind of what he saw when he took over the job.
What we've learned is that we've got great culture. We've established the culture. I don't know if we have the culture if I don't do what I did in the summer. I don't know if our team would be playing the way it does if I didn't make the coaching change. Usually, they're going by the GM 101 book. You hang on to the old coach. Team doesn't go off to a good start, then you fire that coach and you go to the next one. That wasn't the way I thought. I said, I'm going to get the culture right. I'm going to get the coach that with the style of play that I want. And nothing, there's nothing against John Hines. I mean, that was a very difficult. I saw how good he was at the end of the year and what he did with that team. But I just felt that the style with the group and all that was going to be a little different. And we're playing different, as you see. I felt that let's do it now because I'm not worried about taking some swings.
And you know what? He's hitting the ball out of the park with those swings. And as a fan, I couldn't be happier about the state of my team. And again, I don't know the answer to this. This is a question more than anything else. Is it possible that he's a better general manager than he was a coach? Because if he is a better general manager than he is a coach, this thing's only going up from here. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Adam Vingan texted me this today. One of our guys up in Canada had something very surprising to hear somebody say about the Predators coming out of Canada. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
March Madness is always fascinating, and the NHL playoffs first round, just as fascinating. So who could be this year's NHL Cinderella like last year's Florida Panthers? How about the Nashville Predators? Yes, they are singing in the Music City. 13-0-2 after being walloped 9-2 at home by the Dallas Stars. They got everything going for themselves. They got offense. They got an excellent goaltender, Yosi Saros. Barry Trotz made some significant moves in the offseason, and now this team is finding its way. And that's the key thing, is finding your way when it matters most. There's no better time than when the playoffs begin. Anybody in the Western Conference that has to face the Nashville Predators in the first round, you should be scared. You should be really scared, because they're exactly the type of team that you look at playing and you think, okay, yeah, we finished ahead of them in the standings, but are we better than them? Right now, there is no better team that is playing at the level that the Nashville Predators are. We talked about the Edmonton Oilers on a 16-game winning streak, 13-0-2 in their last 15 games. Why are we not talking about the Nashville Predators?
Craig Button, TSN in Canada. Vingan sent that to me today, and I said, that's perfect. That's a perfect cut for my 4:15 segment. And I say this because they're even talking about you in Canada. The Predators never get respect in Canada. And here they are, Craig Button's on TSN like the Nashville Predators. Everybody in the West needs to be put on alert about the Nashville Predators. And let me just say this. If I was any one of these GMs or coaches, the Winnipeg, Colorado, Dallas, Vancouver, I would not want to draw the Predators right now. It's crazy to say this. I am being objective when I say this, Ian.
Okay.
I'd rather draw the defending Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights, because if you don't get the Predators, you're getting the other team. I would rather draw the Vegas Golden Knights right now than the Predators.
The Preds are playing better than Vegas right now. There's no doubt about that.
But they're going to get Mark Stone back.
Probably, yep.
Do you think
Eichel is back.
If you were Rick Bowness, right? Is Cheveldayoff still the GM there?
That was Winnipeg.
Right. I'm talking about Bowness.
And Winnipeg. I think Cheveldayoff might have gotten fired.
I think he did too, but he's also kind of like a cockroach, man. That guy never goes away.
Yeah.
He's been there for 100 years.
Maybe I'm thinking of the Columbus guy, Jarmo Kekalainen.
Kekalainen, he got fired. I was like, about time Jarno Kekalainen got fired. But I'll tell you this right now. Do you think that those guys are sitting there saying we'd rather play Nashville than Vegas, or do you think they're saying we'd rather play Vegas than Nashville?
That's a good question. I mean, if you're asking right now, I think you'd have to rather play Vegas, just given how the Preds have been playing.
I was going to tell you right now.
Even though Vegas might have more talent.
The Predators can win the Cup. Like, there is a chance that this team can win the Cup. Now, the key word in what I said is a chance. And I cannot underline that A enough to say that there is a chance that they can win the Cup. They're not the favorites. They won't be the favorites. They won't be favored in a playoff series, I don't think. But there is a chance. And we will see tomorrow. You know, tomorrow is the big measuring stick game when they go up against Florida, because, you know, Winnipeg and Colorado, Colorado was the measuring stick game that told us that this team belonged, that this team was a contender and not a pretender, and that they shouldn't sell. The Winnipeg game, I think, was a statement that, hey, it doesn't matter who you draw in these Western Conference playoffs. You better be ready for the Predators. This game tomorrow, I think, kind of, if you go to Florida, and again, I don't know how the game's going to go, but let's just say you do tomorrow what you did to Winnipeg and what you did to Colorado here at home. That's a message that it doesn't matter who you end up playing, whenever you play them, wherever you play them, whatever the circumstances you are playing them under, because you will not have Fabro and Lazan and Stasny and all those guys tomorrow, and it won't matter. If you beat this team, I mean, it really means that you're competing for the Cup. Buster texts in. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com, and Buster says, Jared, let's start talking about the Predators only being 7 points down from Dallas. If folks are talking about the Wild being 8 back of the Predators, then Dallas needs to be on alert because the Predators are legit. So I don't think the Predators are getting into the top 3 of the division. I think that that's reality of how you started the season. I'm not sure it matters that much, but I don't think you're going to get into the top 3 of the division, and I can live with that, which means you won't have home ice in the playoffs. And again, I can live with that because this team is freaking nails away from Bridgestone Arena. That being said, is anybody talking about the Wild? I went to moneypuck.com. The Predators have a 98% chance. I think it's like 98.4. A 98% chance of making the playoffs. So if we're going to sit here and say, well, you know, they haven't made the playoffs yet, Minnesota's only 8 behind, 98%. And if that's the case, then that means you catching up 7 points back at Dallas, probably something like 98%. I'm just going to tell you this right now. When it comes to the Predators and the rest of the Western Conference, specifically Dallas, I don't want to give Dallas any reason to think that what happened in that 9-2 game is not what is reality. I want the Dallas Stars to look at the Predators and say, oh, we beat that team 9-2. Because if you match up with them in the playoffs, that team that they beat is not the team that they're going to be playing. And I texted Sean Henry this like 3 weeks ago. And I said, this Dallas game, that 9-2 Dallas game, might be the best thing that ever happened to this team. And he said to me, he goes, it didn't feel that way at the time, but you might be right. And considering they haven't lost in regulation since then, I think there may be something. So I want Dallas. I don't want to catch up to Dallas. I want Dallas to think that they can squash the Predators with their feet like a bug. Because they're not going to play the same team they beat 9-2. And if they think they're going to play the same team that they beat 9-2, that's like the Chicago Blackhawks in 2017 thinking that they were playing the same team that they beat in 2015. You got another thing coming for you. Your phone's on the Preds. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number. 615-737-1025. FanDuel Sportsbook. You know I love FanDuel. You know they're my official sportsbook app. From upsets to buzzer beaters, nothing compares to college basketball in the month of March. And even though I don't love the first 4, I guess you can make it interesting to yourself by throwing a few shekels on it on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. But sometimes you're on the wrong end of those moments, and that's why FanDuel is giving everyone a no-sweat bet from now until March 20th. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or if you already have an account. You'll get bonus bets back if your bet doesn't win. You can even use your no-sweat bet on a college basketball parlay. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app if you haven't already by going to FanDuel.com/JGM and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and my official sportsbook app. That's right, 21 and over in present Tennessee. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Left wing corner, Kiefer Sherwood. Sherwood slides it over. Now Sherwood goes back again in the corner. Out front, McCarron, he scores! Sherwood to McCarron. It's 5-2. Trying to flip it out in front. Comes back to the right point. Tyson Berry. Now for Beauvillier. Back to Berry. Left side, he scores! There was traffic in front. And the Predators lead by 4. Forsberg watches. The puck comes over for O'Reilly on the right half wall. O'Reilly. Now they try to go down for a redirect and a shot right in front of the scar. Philip Forsberg there to put it home. What an incredible Predators now leading 8-2.
Tommy Novak taking that puck to the front of the net.
Just kicking that ass last night. And that's what you do when you're good against a team that is not. What was crazy was in the third period last night, in the third period, the Predators were so hot, it kind of turned into social hour at the game, at least from my vantage point. It kind of turned into social hour. And so I was up there with my buddy, and Hutton was up there, and Hutton's buddy, like the greatest state trooper of all time, was up there. And, we were just sitting there like just shooting the breeze, talking about all kinds of things. And we'd be mid-conversations like, another goal. But again, it had turned into social hour because the Predators were just beating the crap out of San Jose, which is what they're supposed to do. To your phones, as promised, 615-737-1025, and our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Dustin has a bunch of thoughts saying that this feels better. This team has men on it. No Johansson, no Duchesne. It feels better and comfortable and a little bit of the same, but much better. It's like the Dallas Stars was the savior for the Predators, their wake-up game, and the Predators cannot thank them enough, and I bet Dallas doesn't want to play the Predators in the first round. I don't think anybody wants to play the Predators in the first round. But here's the problem with the NHL playoffs. See, this is the hard part of trying to say that I think they're cup contenders, knowing that they very easily could lose in round one. I mean, I think all of these teams are legit. I think Vancouver's legit. I mean, Edmonton, I know they're going to choke, but how can you not look at Edmonton and say that team can win the cup with those players, especially the way they play every time they play you? So that team's legit. I mean, Colorado's legit. Dallas is legit. Like LA and Vegas and Winnipeg, I'm not so sold on for different reasons. But those Vancouver, Dallas, Colorado, you're all legit. So if Edmonton, for instance, if you lose in the first round of the playoffs because Vancouver just beat you, I mean, that's how the cookie crumbles in this league. Just like when Chicago beat you in 2015 and all of a sudden it's April 20th or whatever and it's over, and it sucks because it felt like the team was good enough to be playing hockey still, but you played a very good team that ended up winning the cup. Like that very easily could happen to the Predators this year. Dustin also says in regards to Barry Trotz, and again, my question with Barry Trotz is this. Could Barry Trotz be a better general manager than he was a coach? Dustin says coaches work with managers and they start to understand the business side. Barry Trotz is on fire and nobody can put him out. See, I think that that's a blanket statement I don't agree with. And again, I love Laviolette. Ian, do you think Laviolette could ever be a general manager?
I don't think so, no.
I think he'd be a terrible general manager.
Not the right demeanor. Nothing against Peter, but there's there needs to be a certain demeanor for that.
You know what I think Peter would be? I think Peter would be a great talk show host.
You think so?
I do.
You know him better than I do.
I think that, like Laviolette's a lot like Vrabel. Okay? And I kept trying to make that point, and nobody wanted to hear it, and I don't understand why people didn't want to hear that. Like, Mike Vrabel's going to get another job, and there's a chance Mike Vrabel wins. Like, I just want everybody to know that. Mike Vrabel, I think what happens with those guys is they are ends justify the means guys, and all they care about is how to win, and they're going to do things their way because they think that their way is the best way to win. And that doesn't mean that they're bad guys. I've never said Vrabel's a bad guy. Now, I'm sure Vrabel doesn't like me, but I've never said Mike Vrabel's not a good guy. I don't know, I wouldn't say he's the best guy, but I wouldn't say he's a bad guy either. I think Vrabel will be a pretty good talk show host because he's in a different arena. It's not like, okay, everything I say is going to get dissected and I can't really defend myself and I have to look like I'm this and I have to, you can really throw some barbs out there. And I think Vrabel can do that. I think Peter's same way. I also don't think Vrabel would ever be a good general manager, even though a lot of you all wanted him to be general manager when they fired John Robinson. And I begged, don't do that. And apparently he wanted to be general manager too, according to The Athletic. One texter texts in to complain about the fact that complain about Bally Sports, saying that it's a shame that I can't watch the Predators on local television or on some sort of packaging service. I refuse to buy Bally Sports packages and cannot wait to see them change this format to something that we can all get. Well, guess what? Two things. One, tomorrow's game is on ESPN+. So you don't have to have cable to watch the game, but you do have to have ESPN+. Two, and this is what I think really hurts the Bally Sports of the world, the playoffs are all on cable. The playoffs will be on TNT or ESPN or ABC, and so we'll all get the playoffs. And I think what's really hurt the Bally Sports of the world is they're going to these cable providers and they're saying, we've got all the games. And the cable providers for the longest time said, well, we have to carry the Bally Sportses and pay $1 gazillion in order to do it because they've got all the games. And then all of a sudden, what happened was, I think Dish Network and Sling, which it's the same company, but Sling, I think, is the streaming version of Dish, which is the Dish version. They said, we're done with this. And if you don't like it, you can go sign up for another cable provider. And that was a real big risk at the time. And what they noticed was that a lot of people weren't ditching the service because they were just fine without it. And that really hurt Bally Sports and all the other regional sports networks. And so they pay the teams a bunch of money. And because they pay the teams a bunch of money, they have to get a bunch of money. And what's happened is all these streaming services that want to offer low cost, the whole point of getting somebody to ditch cable in order to get one of these streaming services is the price point. So you do that, and then it's like, well, we're better off without it, and this is how we all get screwed. And that's what's happened here. So, I mean, Robert, I hear I feel your pain, but it's going to be a while before that changes, I think. Maybe it'll change probably. The reason I can't tell you when it's going to change is because it's in bankruptcy court, and bankruptcy court is very fickle in terms of what may happen. Dylan says, I absolutely do not want to see Edmonton in the playoffs. I still have PTSD from all of those Leon Draisaitl games. Let me tell you this, Dylan. I agree. And I think you're going to get more Draisaitl games if you play Draisaitl in the playoffs. That is the one team that I absolutely don't want to see in the playoffs. In fact, I would argue that the Predators are better off staying in the central side of the bracket so that they don't draw into Edmonton. Now, if you get to a Western Conference final and you play Edmonton, I'll settle for it out of court and pray that UC Soros can steal a series because that's what it's going to take. I mean, even the way they're playing right now against McDavid and Draisaitl, I've seen those guys come into Bridgestone Arena and score 50 goals a game. And so have you. But that's why I want to be in the Central Division. I was talking to Max about this yesterday. I am rooting for Vancouver and against Colorado, Edmonton, and Dallas, or Colorado, Winnipeg, and Dallas, so that you can draw into the Central as the first wild card and not into the Pacific. Nate says the first round of the NHL playoffs are usually on the local broadcast, not national. That's not true, Nate.
It should be both.
It's both, Nate. I just want you to know that. I don't want somebody's going to hear this, they're going to say what Nate said. No. All of the first round games will be on TNT or ESPN or ABC. That's the rules. And again, what I think is hurting these sports is fans are like, okay, well, I'm not going to pay the extra to be able to watch the Bally Sports games, but when it really matters, I'll get my games. That's what YouTube TV is for. But, again, the playoffs will all be on. If you've got any form of cable, you will get the playoffs. Matthew says, I'm a season ticket holder, and this 15-game stretch, I've only been able to watch or attend 2 games. The 2 games they've lost in overtime. The next game I'm supposed to attend is Tuesday against Vegas. Should I consider not going to continue this trend? And I can listen on the radio, however, thankfully. So he's a season ticket holder, and the 2 games that he's watched are the 2 games they've lost, the Montreal game and the Minnesota game. I think you have to stay home. You asked. I'm just telling you right now. I think you need to stay home. Now, you may not stay home, and it's your choice. It's your decision. It's your season tickets. But you asked me by texting in, the only 2 games I've watched are the 2 games that they've lost on this 15-game stretch. I have tickets. You know what? I'll tell you this. Let's see how tomorrow goes. If they win tomorrow night at Florida, you can't go to the game Tuesday. Well, and then there's Saturday against Detroit. But we'll just use tomorrow. If they win tomorrow, you can't go. If they lose tomorrow or they lose Saturday, then you can go to the game. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. More of your Preds phones to get to, and we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Karen mentioned that the third period is really where you guys have begun kind of asserting your will on everyone else. That wasn't the case at the beginning of the year. What in your mind has kind of led to that?
I think growth. I think understanding. I think, you talk about the world relentless. I think that's kind of what our third periods are starting to look like. We're on top of them. There's not a lot of space. We're not sitting back. I think early in the year, we're probably in between a little bit. We lacked a little confidence closing out games. Through the stretch, we're gaining experience, we're gaining maturity, and we're understanding certain situations.
There you go. That's my coach, Andrew Brunette. And I tell you, this is a special team. Now, Ian, what have I been promising the fans all day today on the program?
Ooh, tickets.
And what did I tell all of my friends at the beginning of the show? Because the team is so hot now, everybody wants to go to the games.
Do not ask you for tickets.
Do not text me for tickets. If you have my phone number, do not send me a text and ask me for tickets to the games. Because the tickets I have are my tickets, and I'm going to the games. So, no, I do not have tickets to give to you. But I do have a pair of tickets for you on Tuesday night. And I've been talking about them all day. Should we do it? I'm asking you, Ian.
What was the question?
Should we give them away?
Why not?
So we should do it now. I want you to X out the phones right now so that nobody can call right now. And I'm sorry for the people that were hanging on to talk about the Predators. You can call back later or text. But I want you to X out the phone. So if you're calling right now, you're going to lose. When Ian unlocks the phones at 615-737-1025, you need to dial in. And if you're caller 5, you will be going to see the Predators take on the Golden Knights this Tuesday at Bridgestone Arena. And if you're saying, Jared, you're just torturing these people, you're being mean, you're right, I am having a little fun with this. Ian, unleash the hounds.
Unleashed.
Good luck.
Doors open.
615-737-1025. Meanwhile, we're back to your phones on the Predators. One texter says, Jared, do you think Jeremy Lauzon will break the NHL's hit record if he's able to come back within the next week or so? Do you think he still has time? I love when our players continue to stay in the limelight around the league. Number 1, I don't know what the hit record in the NHL is. Number 2, I don't care. Number 3, I know Lauzon has a bunch of hits. I couldn't tell you how many he has in comparison to the record. Right? Like, this is not Roger Maris's 61 home runs. Let me say this, and this is how much I love the coach. I was so down on Jeremy Lauzon. I didn't like it when they traded for him, and they gave up a second-round pick. I thought he was terrible the rest of that 2022 season. I thought it was ridiculous to give him a 4-year contract. I felt like it was David Poile chasing good money after bad by signing Lauzon to the deal. I thought Lauzon was terrible last year. I didn't think Lauzon belonged in the NHL. And ever since Andrew Brunette showed up, Jeremy Lauzon has not only been a good player on this team, but he's a guy who, now that he's hurt, and I'm like, oh, no, not Lauzon. And then when Barry came on the show yesterday and he said that Lauzon would be healthy enough to play if it were the playoffs, but they just want to make sure they get him right, I thought, ooh, thank goodness. That's how much of a 180 Jeremy Lauzon has done under this coach. And so while I don't care about the other stuff, I don't care about the other stuff. I do care, that they get him back healthy because he's important. And I remember how much the Calle Yarncroke injury right around this time of the 2018 season against Winnipeg, he got hit by Cagliano, and he was never the same. And that team, because of their chemistry, took a big shot because of that. One texter says that they have been told that they are no longer welcome until further notice because they have been missing the games and the Predators have been winning. So, good luck on that front. One texter says, everybody's just texting into the text line saying they'll take those guys' tickets, who said that he's not sure if he should go to the game Tuesday. Boy, a lot of people are weighing in. One texter says, Jared, the biggest curse ever is you telling him he can't go. I was telling him he can't go if they lose tomorrow. The streak will be over if they lose tomorrow, and then he can go to the game. But if they keep winning and he hasn't been going to the games, he can't go to the game when Vegas comes up and you're trying to go for 18 points in a row or whatever the hell it is. And I got to tell you, the one thing that I feel like Barry Trotz and I both share when it came to this, and I don't know if he specifically said this yesterday on the program, like he did. I don't think he said like, oh, I'm nervous that we're winning a bunch now, but I'm worried that we won't be when push comes to shove and it's really playoff time. And he didn't say it, but I felt it in the conversation yesterday. And I would be lying to you if I said that I wasn't a little concerned, too, about the idea that this team is on fire right now. And as we know in sports, all things ultimately come to an end, and that what goes up has to come down at some point. And so this team's red hot, and the playoffs are about 3 weeks away. And so it's like, can they maintain this for 3 weeks? And if they can't, then what happens in the playoffs? You wasted this good run. But on the other hand, I say to myself, well, okay, yes, but what are you going to tell them to lose? You're going to go up to the players and say, hey, you know what? Don't win this game because we don't want to waste our good winning streak. Of course not. And the other thing that I think is really important of this streak is outside of the 2 games against San Jose and Anaheim in San Jose, pretty much dominated almost every single one of these games. Now, they did not dominate against Columbus on that Saturday game, but for the most part, the Predators are, the Predators are dominating, which I'll give them credit for, which makes me think that when you dominate the bad teams, you're good. The things the Predators used to do when they weren't a legitimate good team, like a legitimate contending team, is they play up and down to their competition. And that'll drive you crazy. This team's not playing up and down to their competition. This team is beating the crap out of the bad teams. And honestly, they're going toe-to-toe and pushing back on the big boys. And that's a positive sign. 615-737-1025. Carolina's out. Chase is in. Jared versus Joe. That's next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So, I got to tell everybody right now, I am a little surprised that Caroline is on vacation. I hope she's having a wonderful time. But, I mean, we got the tournament. We got hockey. This team doesn't lose anymore. And Caroline's on vacation? I'm kidding. So Caroline's out, Chase is in, but it is 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. So even though we had to finagle a bunch of stuff in order to get Joe Rexroad's schedule to work out so he can go to a press conference where he may or may not write something off of what they said, it is time now for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexroad. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
All right, Jared versus Joe, presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Chase is in for Caroline, who's out this week. Chase, lead us off.
All right, I'm going to start. Obviously, we're going to hit a lot of Titans and Preds, but I'm going to start with one that I know you two are going to be very passionate about. Joe, you will lead us off. Is the Vanderbilt men's basketball job a good job?
Man, that's a tough one, Chase. So, I mean, I think, like, good. How do you define good? My instinct is to say yes, because it's in one of two leagues that moving forward is going to have an increasing financial advantage. The two leagues, the Big Ten and the SEC, are going to have increasing financial advantages over the other leagues in college basketball, because I do absolutely believe that the university should help recruit for athletics. I think you've seen that in some sports. Because there is a new basketball building, 90,000 square feet. I know people don't care about facilities anymore. It's all about NIL. But they've had no facilities. Now they're going to actually have something that's their own operations center, practice facility. That is a game changer. Also, the collective, by what I've been told, is actually doing extremely well. They've got rich people who want to give and want to win in athletics. So all of those things tell me, yes, is it as good, where does it rank in the SEC? I mean, I'm not putting it in the top, probably the top half. So I guess if you're going to compare it to the SEC, you could say no. But in the larger picture of college basketball, yes, it's a good job.
So on one hand, I think it's a good job. And on another hand, I guess I don't think it is. I'm going to take Joe at his word. And I'm going to say that I do think that, I guess it's true that they've got NIL money. If you've got NIL money, you can get players. And if you can get players, you can have a team as early as next year. And that's what's really important. Money and players. I mean, it's as simple as that. The other reason why I think it's a good job is because the expectations aren't very high. So if you come in and you're armed with NIL money and you get to the tournament and you get knocked out in the second round, everybody's going to be happy around here. Whereas, if John Calipari gets knocked out in the second round, he may get fired at Kentucky, or at least he should, in my opinion, get fired at Kentucky. But the one thing I will say at Vanderbilt that I hate saying it because I like Vandy fine. I hope they do well. And whatever. People just don't care about Vandy anymore like they used to. And I think that's what the Jerry Stackhouse years did to this program. And I believe that everybody will support a winner, but will everybody support a team that gets into the NCAA tournament as a 9 seed and gets knocked out in the first round? Or will people support an NIT team? And the answer to that is no. So, I mean, on one hand, apparently you got the money, and we know Vandy has the money to pay the coach, and we know that Vanderbilt's going to give the coach time because that's what Vanderbilt does. On the other hand, I mean, you have got to get people excited about Vandy basketball in Nashville, and people haven't been excited about Vandy basketball in Nashville in 10 years since Kevin Stallings cried into that towel. So I think that that's the biggest uphill climb is you're the Vandy basketball coach. You get a big SEC job making millions of dollars, and you're going to look for people in your city to give it, to care, and they're going to be like, oh, okay, hey, coach, and that's going to be it. And I think that's a much tougher deal to overcome than people make.
Joe?
Listen, I do think that the coaching question needs to be good at selling a program. And I think that is definitely something that Stackhouse wasn't good enough at. But I think if you bring that energy, I absolutely – listen, late last season, they beat Tennessee in that game, and the place was full, but it was like 50-50, right? Late last season, when they started going on their run and they started beating good teams, they got to 11-7, It wasn't full. It wasn't classic vintage Memorial Gym in the good old days, but it was pretty good, man. Bryce Drew's last home game against Florida in his first year, they went on this run, got a bid. The place was packed. I mean, that day, people in there were like, this is Memorial Magic. I don't think – look, there are obviously way more things to take
Bryce Drew should still be the coach. I mean, I think that's a different discussion, but Bryce Drew, I think, was doing okay.
Right, but all I'm saying is that I don't think it's as dire. I understand, these years have hurt, for sure. But I don't think it's as dire. You get energy in there and players. The SEC is fantastic basketball right now. I think there's still a lot more people in this city than there were 10, 20 years ago that are general fans who want to go see something good, who would go to that place if it's actually good basketball. So I really think that, like, the question of this is it a good job? To me, it's like, is it attractive to, like, a good coach who's a good coaching candidate? And I think it will be. I really do.
So, I mean, I think the job should be attractive to a good coaching candidate because the job comes with money. I mean, you can't get – I'm sorry, Josh Schertz, you can't get $4 million or whatever it is they're going to pay. You can't get that at Indiana State. I'm sorry to Bucky – what's his name over at Samford that everybody loves so much?
Bucky McKay, yeah.
Yeah, Bucky. I mean, I promise you, he ain't making $3 million. So, I mean, to me, that's going to be the biggest selling point, right? I mean, you should be able to get any of these coaches. I mean, I don't necessarily want Chris Mack. Now, the people that know Chris Mack, that I trust, say that he'd be a good fit. But, again, I think that I do think that people will go see good basketball. But I do think that college basketball is becoming less popular. And I think that, Vandy is, it's they've lost some of their fan base over these terrible years. What's next?
All right. Good stuff. What's next is this. And I understand that when it comes to the Titans roster, it's still incomplete. You have the draft to go. They have to go get a left tackle. Jared, I know you will tell the Floyd story over and over again about right tackles.
That's not even left tackle. That's right tackle.
Yeah, right. But once they get it all figured out and get through the draft and finish up free agency, do you feel that Rand Carthon has put Will Levis in the absolute best position to succeed going into his first full year as a starter? Jared, you lead off.
No. I think the Titans have put Will Levis – I don't think the Titans have put Will Levis in a terrible position, but I think the Titans have put Will Levis in a bad situation. And it – again, some of this is spilt milk, and so it's like, well, you can't change the fact that they had Tim Kelly as the offensive coordinator when Will Levis came in here, or that they stuck him out there with that horrendous offensive line last year and he got killed. You can't change that, but that is the situation that they have put Will Levis into. And I look at these quarterbacks, from the 2021 class and the 2022 class, and I see that every single one of them has failed except for Trevor Lawrence, who hasn't lived up to the billing that Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be, and Brock Purdy, who has the absolute best team and best coach you can go into. And I'm like, is it the quarterback? Like, is it in all of these cases, whether it's Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett, whomever, is it the quarterback's fault every time, or is it these organizations are putting these quarterbacks with bozos like Matt Canada and Matt Patricia that all of a sudden these guys are set up for failure? And I will say the Titans have done some good things to help Levis, considering that they set him up for failure last year by signing Lloyd Cushenberry and bringing in Brian Callahan and signing a receiver and everything else. But the truth of the matter is, I mean, what Will Levis is dealing with right now is not what C.J. Stroud has in Houston. And I am worried that, again, I think that we're so into talent acquisition that we overlook talent development across all sports, but especially football. And I think when it comes to Levis, like, this is a critical year to set him up for success. And right now, they don't have an inside backer on defense. And if you don't have an inside backer that's wearing your green dot, I mean, I don't know what we're supposed to expect. So now you're going to ask Levis to go out there and throw the ball 30 times and try to score 45 points, and I don't think that's good. So where I sit right now, I'm worried that they are still setting him up to fail.
Joe?
So I guess based on that last comment, I mean, Jared and I are looking at this totally differently in the first place. Look, if the question is best put in the best position to win, then we can talk about linebackers and the defense. I'm concerned about the Titans need to try to win next year. Don't get me wrong. And also there's a whole lot more to come in this offseason. So I think, we know what it is right now. There are more moves to come. But I look at it purely in terms of what they were doing around him offensively. Would I say best possible, Chase? I wouldn't say that. I think that's overstating it a little bit. But I think that they've done, if you assume that they're going to get the franchise left tackle, there's still a right tackle to worry about. But you talk about Ridley joining Hopkins, the Pollard Spears backfield, Cushenberry. I think that they've done a lot of good things. I think overall it's been pretty good on the offensive side of the ball. I agree. Defensively, there's a lot left to be desired there. But to me, development of Levis, obviously you want to win, but if they're losing games next year because he's only scoring 28 points, that means he's playing well and he's developing, and there's a bigger picture at work. Yeah, you want to win, but you talk about defenses supporting quarterbacks in the effort of winning. It doesn't really matter to Will Levis if the defense stops anybody or not.
Oh, I think winning matters. And I'll give you an example. After that Miami game, and Levis was great at the very, very end of the Miami game, but let's not forget Levis threw a pick 6 in that game. Levis was not great in that game until the very, very end of it, and he was great. And after the Miami game, the sentiment, I think with the team and outside the team was, oh, yes, yes, yes on Levis. But nobody felt that way after the Indianapolis game. And in the Indianapolis game, Levis led them back, scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter. They missed an extra point. The game goes to overtime. And then Levis drives them down. They kick a field goal. Defense can't get a stop. They lose. And the conversation the next day was not yes, 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 yes. I think the development of the quarterback, giving him time, having belief in him, I think winning is a part of that.
Protect the guy and give him people to throw to so he can play well. We can find out if he's good.
But again, with Brock Purdy, the thing with him is that, he wins games. That's why Purdy's going to get paid a bunch of money. Is because he wins. He's not more impressive than some of these other guys.
You don't think it's because he's protected and throws to open receivers that makes
and
plays?
He's got a great defense and he wins.
Yeah. Okay, Jared.
Winning is a quarterback stat.
You can debate what tier he is, but we know he can play. He can play football. He's good.
Who would you rather have, Levis or Purdy?
Who's better?
Yeah, who would you rather have?
How could you possibly? Well, you can't possibly say Levis is better.
I think I would rather have Will Levis than Brock Purdy.
Okay. Look, I don't know what's going to happen in the future with Levis, so I'm not going to totally dunk on that. I understand that Brock Purdy's having success because of the support around him, but Brock Purdy's still being judged as a quarterback in an offense. So if the Niners were, if that offense was doing the exact same stuff, but they were losing a bunch of close games because their defense stunk, the evaluation of Brock Purdy would not be different. Not by people who actually have to evaluate quarterbacks and their life and jobs depend on it. There have been plenty of good quarterbacks in this league who have played with crap defenses who have had mediocre teams because it's not their fault. The defense sucks. Dan Marino had plenty of years like that in the NFL. John Elway had years like that in the NFL. Plenty of quarterbacks have. They're still franchise quarterbacks. Those
right now, I think there's one franchise quarterback in the NFL whose team sucks around him, and that's Herbert. That's the one guy who, other than that, I think every other quote-unquote franchise quarterback has a good team around him.
This is Justin Fields. The Bears are moving on from him because he's too ponderous and they just wasn't quite accurate enough, and all the things of evaluating a quarterback. Whether their D was good or bad, or they lost. They lost because they had a bad offense, but quarterback evaluations are separate from defense. Quarterback greatness, sure. I guess Peyton Manning gets a second ring really because of the defense of the Broncos, but we know what Peyton Manning is. What we're trying to figure out right now is what Will Levis is.
I just think that, again, if we sit there and we see Will Levis lose games, that they will lose confidence in him because at the end of the day, this is about winning. And
if he goes 25 for 30 for 350
yards, throw interceptions,
and the defense gives up 34 points, they're going to lose confidence in Will Levis.
What's that?
Will Levis goes 25 for 30 for 340 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. They lose 35-34, and they lose confidence in Will Levis? Only an idiot would.
Well, but see, the problem is that that's not understanding what actually happens in these games. If the Titans don't stop anybody on defense, they're down 14-0. He's going to be throwing the ball every snap. He's going to throw interceptions.
Okay.
So then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, if he doesn't throw an incomplete pass and he throws 5 touchdowns and no picks and they still lose like Brady in the Super Bowl against Philadelphia when he threw for 500 yards, yeah, we'll say Levis is great. But that's not the reality. The reality is if Levis goes out into these games and he's chasing scores and he's getting hit because he's in shotgun the whole game because they're behind and he doesn't have a tight end to throw to who can catch the ball, then those are going to be problems. And so, I mean, the Titans
and
just ignoring right guard and tight end.
And those facts and be able to react to them and understand those situations? You don't think anyone can put anything in context?
So you think a second-year quarterback should be able to not turn the football over in a game in which he's trailing by 14 points and has to throw the entire time because his defense can't even get lined up because they don't have a green dot defensive linebacker?
I just said, Jared, we'll understand the situation. So if that is the situation, he's chasing the game and has to throw it 45 times, I think most people who are smart will understand that.
Again, I just remember how everybody took the Miami game and how everybody took the Colts game, and the difference was defense got a stop in the Miami game. They didn't get a stop in the Colts game. Jared versus Joe continues on the other side. Hold on, Joe. We'll continue on the other side. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Chase, go.
All right. With the NCAA tournament and where Joe is, it's a pretty simple question for me. If the Tennessee Vols do not get past the Sweet 16, what should the repercussions be for Rick Barnes moving forward? Joe, you lead off.
Well, if you're suggesting that, like, should he be fired? No, he should not, will not be fired. I mean, you know, he's right there with possibly the best basketball coach Tennessee's had. Maybe Bruce Pearl could have been, but he screwed that up. And, you know, you can go back to Ray Mears, of course, and those great teams. They never – by the way, Ray Mears – I mean, a lot of people say Ray Mears is the greatest coach in the history of Tennessee. He had a lot of great teams. He had Ernie and Bernie, and they had 2 opportunities in the NCAA tournament and won 0 games. 0. And Ray Mears is celebrated as this amazing basketball coach. He was a great basketball coach. The NCAA tournament has a way of humbling people. Rick Barnes way underperforms his overall performance in the NCAA tournament. There's no doubt about it. And that's unfortunate. And so if they don't get past that point, he'll hear about it, and I will. Any Vols fan who says I'm just not going to do the regular season anymore, I get it. But it's like repercussions. No, good God, he's not going to get fired, and he shouldn't get fired.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting fired. I don't think there's an appetite to fire him, and quite frankly, I don't think that. I mean, look, I think he's the perfect coach for Tennessee. Because when football season's over, Vol fans can pay attention to basketball, and when they pay attention to basketball, you know, it's interesting in December, January, February, and they get their hopes up in March, and then they lose, and they're sad about it for a week, and then they turn their attention to baseball. And I think it's perfect. And so I don't think Rick Barnes is on any sort of a hot seat. I think Rick Barnes kind of gets to name his exit as far as Tennessee's concerned, unless he just goes in the toilet after this. But if he keeps winning like this, I don't think there's any issue there. The coach I think is on the hot seat this weekend, or should be, probably isn't but should be, is Calipari. I think if Calipari loses this weekend, given their draw, he should be fired. Because at some point, with the money he makes at the school he's coaching, if you accept not going to the second weekend for 5 years like Kentucky hasn't since 2019, they didn't accept that from Tubby. They didn't accept that from Joe B. Hall. I mean, they didn't accept that from Billy Gillespie. If you do that, if you're Cal, and you accept that because you owe him too much money, then basketball does not mean as much to Kentucky as they say it means. So I don't think Barnes should be on the hot seat, but I think Cal should be on the hot seat this weekend.
I agree. I mean, if they don't get out this weekend, I agree. I mean, there's a higher standard. It's been way too long. And by the way, they could lose to Oakland. I've got them in my Final Four because I think they're going to catch fire, but they could lose any game the way they play deep.
God, I love it. Oh, my God, if they lost to Oakland. Oh, my God, would that be awesome.
Golden Grizzlies.
Chase, last one. What's next?
All right, with the Predators' 15-game point streak that they are on right now, in Barry Trotz, we trust. He's put this team together, but once you get into the playoffs, it's all on the players, it's all on the coaches. Do you trust that they are strong enough to go on a deep run, given how they've played the last 15 games, but also considering how they played before that point? Jared, you lead off.
I mean, the answer is yeah. I think that this team is every bit the contender that they were in 2015, 16, 17. And, I mean, 18, they were the Cup favorite, and I don't think they're the Cup favorite right now. But in all those years, I mean, 2015, they went to 6 games. 2015, they went to 6 games with Chicago. They blew 3-goal leads in, I think, 2 of them, and they blew a lead in Game 6 as well. And, I mean, you talk to Laviolette, he talks about, like, how that team went toe-to-toe with the eventual Cup champions in Chicago. That's when they knew that they could compete. And I think the next year, that 2016 team was really, really good. And I think the travel between Anaheim and San Jose kind of wore them out a little bit, but I think they could have competed just like they competed in 17. And I think this team is at the same, level that those teams are in terms of contender, unlike 21 and 22, where it was just like, I mean, Jared, anything can happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And we knew they weren't going to beat Colorado. I think that the boohoo John Heinzers like Joe have finally realized that the coaching change was phenomenal and that the Predators are in a much better spot because of it. And it's amazing what happens when you go from a bad coach to a good coach. And so I think the Predators are in great shape. I mean, again, I'm not sure I'd pick them to win a series or whatever, but I do think that they've got a shot, just like all these other teams have a shot.
John Hines doing all right. Just saying, doing all right up there in Minnesota. Listen, I have to come a little bit short of Jared on saying this team is as much a contender as those teams. I disagree. A couple things. First of all, those teams had the best decor in the league. I mean, that was the best decor in the league. Yeah, I mean, Yosi, Ekholm, Ellis, healthy, and Subban. That was special. And also that had the very brief stretch of time when Ryan Johansson actually was a number one center in this league and played like it. And you had Pecorino. I think at goalie, I think it's a wash. It's close. Look, I'm more and more believing this team, and I do believe this team can go in, win a playoff series. You said deep, Chase. I don't know, but what does deep mean? I don't know. But look, I think they've gotten good enough to the point where the anything can happen does apply to them. I agree with Jared that it really didn't apply in the last years. It was just limp your way into the playoffs and be happy with it. This team is dangerous, and I would not want to play them the way they're playing right now. And I'm very interested. And I don't think they're too far behind those teams, but they're not that good.
So here's the one counter I would have to your Johansson claim. Who would you rather have in a playoff series as your number one center? 17-18 Johansson or Ryan O'Reilly right now?
Ooh.
That's a great question.
It's a great question.
It's a great question. I love this line for sure. O'Reilly's fantastic, and he's a winner, and we know this, and he's done it at the most important times. I still think, though, that Johansson, the way he was – I mean, what he did to Jonathan Toews in that Blackhawks series, that's special. Now, he was also hurt, against the Ducks late, and they still got into the final. I think I still might go with him. We forget how overpowering he was and what a playmaker he was with Arvidsson and Forsberg. But it's close.
I think I do.
O'Reilly's
I mean,
great.
again, I think O'Reilly, to your point, he's just such a winner. And I think this team wins, and not in large part because but he's a part of it. I mean, he's a big part of what's happened with this team. Chase, who wins this week's Jared versus Joe?
Well, this was a great competition today. I got to say that. I'm going to give a slight edge to Jared because I agree with him more on the Levis front. I do think if you haven't fixed the defense, and I recognize you can't fill every hole in one offseason, but if he's having to throw the ball, 80 times a game, he's going to be prone to make mistakes. So I'm gonna lean with Jared there.
Yes.
Well, Fairleigh Dickinson beats Purdue. Congrats, Fairleigh Dickinson.
Yes. Let me just say this. Joe, thank you so much for your time. Chase, thank you for subbing in. Joe, go cheer on your Vols to victory this weekend. Enjoy.
There we go. Sparty too. How about that? Thanks, guys.
Stillman and Company. We roll along. 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I got so excited about my Jared versus Joe victory, I forgot to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, just like me and Jared versus Joe. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, they are your champions. They've been taking care of my home for years, and they can do the exact same for you. This month is Happy's Golden Ticket Sweepstakes at Hiller. Enter to win at HillerGoldenTicket.com. All you have to do is enter your email, and you're automatically entered to win. Prizes include a $5,000 Hiller gift card, a $1,000 Hiller gift card, and one of 10 Happy Hiller Club memberships. Or take advantage of zero-interest financing for 12 months on select new HVAC systems, tankless water heaters, and whole-home generators. Do not miss out. Enter to win now. Again, that's HillerGoldenTicket.com. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. What's the plan in terms of making sure that instead of training for a draft or anything like that, that you are really focused on getting better for the start of next season?
Yeah, I'm definitely like that. You know, I'm a workaholic. You know, I'm gonna work myself into the ground, but right now, you know, I'm not, and I'm you know, enjoying myself for the first time in a really long time, which has been incredible, and you know, letting my body get back, and you know, here in a week's time or so, we'll hit the ground running again with training, but. It's been a blessing to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor a little bit, you know, these past few weeks. But, you know, as we figure out what the roster looks like, who there's going to be, I'm going to do whatever I can to get with as many guys as I need to, wherever they may be. I'll be, for the most part, in Nashville, so, you know, getting to learn from the new staff and all that. But, yeah, I mean, doing whatever I can as a leader to, you know, get everyone else ready.
So, Ian, we talked about this earlier today, about what the old man said, about what Mariota needed to do when the old man was still around. Ian, if you can grab that for me, I'd love you. But now we know who's going to be on the team for the most part, right? It's going to be Ridley, Hopkins, Burks, Okonkwo, Wiley, Spears, Pollard, and we did forget Kyle Phillips, Ian, earlier today on the program.
What about Nick Westbrook-Akine?
Oh, yeah, and him too, but we did count him the first time. And so this is what Floyd said Mariota needed to do after they made the coaching change, what he needed to do in order to become a great quarterback.
How do we get Marcus good? Just judging from what I saw last year, I mean, he's going to have to work on his fundamentals. He'll have this entire offseason, and he needs to work on fundamentals. He's going to have to get on the same page with the receivers, and he needs to get all those receivers and fly them to Hawaii, or fly them to Eugene, Oregon, or fly them to Franklin, wherever they can all get together, and they are going to have to live together for about 4 months, throwing every pattern in the book. This is exactly the way you run it. This is the way you run it against this coverage. This is the way you run it, and be on the same page in all of that. And if they don't do those kind of things, then you're going to run into the same issues we did this year, you know, which is the receivers running and out, I'm throwing it in. Well, guess what? That's an interception.
Okay, so I'm going to be hard on the Titans to set him up for success, but he's got to do his part. And as we were talking about that, Ian, Will Levis posted on Instagram.
Okay.
Apparently, Team Levis in the NFLPA Golf Classic is him, Dalton Kincaid, Sean Clifford, and Hendon Hooker. And then he posted him working out by himself in what looks like Cancun in a weight room. I got to tell you.
Some work.
No, if Ridley and DeAndre and Pollard and Spears and Wiley and Chig are not in Cancun with him,
that's an expensive workout.
It doesn't matter. This is the NFL. Like, you think it was cheap for Russell Wilson to send all of his receivers and Robert Turbin and all those guys to courtside at the Lakers?
Probably cheaper than Cancun.
I'm just saying. I don't know, man.
Maybe not courtside.
But in all seriousness, like, and I'm not sitting here judging Levis or anything, saying like he's not doing the work. But I will say, like, this is what I'm talking about. Is here's Levis, and again, I'm making an assumption that he's out there in Mexico by himself. Here's Levis, and I got pictures of Patrick Mahomes working out with Hollywood Brown. You see what I'm saying? Sure. And you can say, Jared, you're being too hard on him. And I'm like, I'm not being hard. I'm just pointing it out. The old man is the one who's like, I don't give a rat's ass what you've got going on in the offseason. You guys need to be together, lockstep, working out, throwing the ball, everything. And he has never thrown the ball to Calvin Ridley before. He needs to start throwing the ball to Ridley. He's never thrown the ball to Tony Pollard before. He needs to start throwing the ball to Pollard. And it wouldn't hurt to throw the ball with the other guys, too. Wes is up next here on our program phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. What's up, Wes?
Oh, Jared, I got a Levis question, man. I found a screenshot of a portion of an article, and when I read it, you were the first person that popped in my head because I want to know if this is a real fear people actually have. But it basically goes on to say that Will Levis is an actor trying to play quarterback and that he's too worried about everything else around him.
Okay, so I saw that. So some a-hole wrote some story. I think it was A to Z Sports. It was either A to Z Sports or Outkick. I can't remember. And I'm not slandering either brand. Wes, thank you for your call. I'm not slandering either brand, but it was basically just like, I think it was like a satirical article. It was certainly not an article to be taken seriously. But you know how it is with the internet. Everybody takes everything seriously. So you probably read this article that was like, Will Levis is an actor who's trying to find himself, who doesn't even know what he should be doing, and blah, blah, blah. And again, it's not even worth talking about. What I will say on the Levis front is this, because I did read that. And it talked about, like, Levis, is an actor who's trying to play the starting quarterback role, and he's unsure of what he even is in real life. And again, I can't remember it word for word. It got sent to me too. I glanced at it and then I moved on because it was stupid. And so, Ian, do you want me to give an opinion on this, or do you want me just to say that it was stupid and move on?
I mean, if you think it's worthy of an opinion, go for it. If you think it's just something we should blow off, I'm cool with that. I didn't read it, so I'm not quite sure the context,
I mean, in all seriousness, this was something stupid. Like, I remember reading it. I think it was A to Z Sport. I can't remember. It was stupid. It might have been Outkick. It was, one of these guys who's like a writer who's not like, I don't want to say anything to like throw anybody under the bus, but it's not like a serious writer. It was not a serious article. It was not. And it basically, again, said that like Will Levis, again, I'm only remembering what it said because it was so stupid, and I looked at it for 5 seconds and moved on. But basically that Levis was an actor who's not a real quarterback or something like that. Here's what I'll say about Levis. I remember reading that and thinking to myself, how old's Levis? 25 years old?
24-5, yeah.
Like, did any of us know what we were at 25 years old?
Not totally, no.
I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I understand people get married sooner than I did, had kids earlier than I did, and have, I guess, figured out their lives earlier than I have. But, I mean, I feel like I'm a totally different person at 34 years old than I was at 28 years old. A totally different person. I remember one time I was talking with Caroline, and Ian, you were a part of this conversation, and I remember saying, like, Caroline, you didn't know me when I was, in my bachelor days. And I then asked Ian, I was like, Ian, do you think there's a difference between me now and me then? And you said there was.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said a little bit.
Maybe a little.
And so, like, it's just, I'm not going to throw Levis under the bus for whatever it may be. Okay, yeah, here's the stupid story. Let's see. Will Levis is an actor trying to play quarterback. Will Levis seems like a good dude, and he seems to really, this looks like it was Outkick, where it came from. Again, I don't know who wrote this. I think it's stupid. Levis feels like an actor playing quarterback. It seems like he's always trying to say the right things and try to act the right way instead of just being himself. I don't think we've seen the real Levis yet. I'm not even sure Levis knows who the real Will Levis is. Again, he's 25. Like, nobody knows what they are at 25. I didn't know what I was. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but I didn't know what I was at 25. This is why we don't have 25-year-old head coaches. But again, I thought the whole thing was stupid, so I don't want to get too worked up about it one way or another. I just want Levis, and let me say this, again, to wrap up the first thing I said about Levis and this. Levis really has to grab the bull by the horns this year. Like, again, I'm not criticizing when I say, hey, you're out there in Cancun right now working out in the weight room at the resort. That's great. My question to you is Hopkins there? Is Ridley there? Is Pollard there? Is Spears there? Is Okonkwo there? Is Wiley there? Is NWI there? Because if they're not there, then that's a problem. I'm trying to help. You need to be with those guys right now. When Calvin Ridley signed his contract, there should have been a text message saying, hey, congratulations, man. I'm so happy. Can't wait to get down with you. And I'm sure there was some of that. Then there needs to be a text that says, we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. at Lipscomb. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. at Father Ryan or MBA or wherever the hell it is they're working out. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. That's what, and I know you're going to say, well, he's only a second-year quarterback. You don't get that long in this league anymore. You do not get that long anymore in this league. I'm on Levis' side. You just heard me and Jared versus Joe say I'd rather have Will Levis than Brock Purdy. But you don't get that long to prove yourself in this league anymore. And those opportunities, they'll be gone before you know it if you don't take advantage of it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The text line is saying that the article was A to Z Sports. Again, it was stupid. Like, it's not even worth our time. Coming up next, I could not believe what has happened, the drama of the NCAA tournament. And it may have been my favorite quote of the tournament, and it happened before the real games even tipped off. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk about Window Nation. That's right. Window Nation is fabulous. Window Nation will take great care of your home with that free in-house estimate. And what they will not do is they will not tell you you need things done that you don't need done. And I know that because they came out to my home and they told me you don't need your windows replaced, which makes me believe that you can trust them because I do as well. March is a critical time to check your home's windows. If yours are cracked or leaking, you'll know about it with the cold air that we've had kind of in and out over the course of these months and whatnot. And right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder that thousands have trusted Window Nation. Do not miss out. Call 866-90Nation or visit windownation.com. Again, right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. That's Window Nation, 866-90Nation, windownation.com. Stillman and Company. Ian, the boo-hoos are already out. Matt,
About
my
what?
last segment.
Oh, you get too hard on Levis?
Jared, who says Levis doesn't have a session scheduled with the receivers, tight ends, and running backs? Who says he didn't text the new guys and said, let's get together soon? It's possible for him to be on vacation and still get with these guys. Your takes are stupid. Ah! I didn't hear in the old man's cut that we played, Ian, I didn't hear him say, hey, get with them once a week. It'll be okay. That's not what I heard. Did you hear that?
No, I don't think so.
I heard the old man say, you got 4 months to get with those receivers every day and throw the ball. That's what I heard. Now, you can hear whatever you want to hear, but again, go ahead and make excuses when he's throwing interceptions or the receivers and he aren't on the same pace or whatever, on the same page. You guys are going to be the ones that are yelling and screaming, he sucks, and it's not going to be my problem. But, again, all this pre-excuse making for the Titans, I've never seen anything like it. It's so embarrassing, some of you guys. Some of you guys so badly want to pretend that everything's okay. And I'm not even saying that everything's not okay. I'm just saying, hey, you need to get your receivers together. You need to work as hard as everybody else. And then people still get upset about it. So Don Monson is the head coach at Long Beach State. And he got fired for a bad basketball season at the end of this year at Long Beach State. And then Long Beach State went and won the Big West Conference, which means they are in the NCAA tournament, even though their coach has been fired. So today was his pregame press conference at the NCAA tournament. Here's what Don Monson said.
Yeah, I don't have to answer anything I don't want to because I'm working for free today. So it's like you guys see the Seinfeld when George Costanza was trying to get fired and couldn't lose his job and still going to work every day, and that's me. Is it an opening statement? Was that it? What do we got going?
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it, Coach. We'll go ahead and start with questions right here, please.
There you go. And I love it for the number one reason that that AD's got to be so embarrassed that they fired him and that he's doing that and won the conference. And what do? Do you put your hat on after you fired the guy and he just won the conference? That's it for us. Preds Insiders next.